Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Florida Sound Archive podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Kaiser. And for today's episode, I have on with me three very special guests. I'm pleased to welcome in three members of a Orlando garage rock band that we are really glad to have on here today to tell the story of the Hate Bombs. I've got on here three members of the band. We have Scott Sugiuchi, we have Ken Chiodini, and we have Dave Ewing here to tell the story again of the Hate Bombs. Hey guys, welcome into the podcast. Great to have you.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
having
Jeff.
us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
It's a pleasure. So, when was the last time all three of you were together in the same room like this?
Geez,
When was our last reunion?
3 years ago,
Yeah, something like that.
we did a 30th anniversary. Was it 30th? Yeah. In 2023, we did a 30th anniversary show at Will's Pub in Orlando.
Well, you came up with the Woggles.
Yeah, but as a band, I guess.
Oh, as a band, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I popped up on stage once in a while after that, but officially.
What was it like getting together like that after all the years apart?
It's great. We flew Freddie in from LA, flew Scott in from Arizona.
No, New Mexico.
I'm in New Mexico. So who said Arizona before? I got confused.
I've said Arizona
Oh, okay, there you go.
times, yeah.
And so, flew them out and did the show. It was great. It's fantastic.
Well, it's so wonderful to hear that because when bands get to reunite and get back together, I know the music was a big part, but I'm sure just seeing each other and hanging out has its own set of fun and nostalgia too. So, but we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the past, time traveling to the days when you all first met, getting started, playing music, perhaps taking some little detour to some other things you were doing simultaneously. So, the first thing I'd like to do, though, if I could, guys, is just take a moment to have everybody introduce themselves and explain what your contributions were to the Hate Bombs.
I'm Dave Ewing. Let's see. We we're all in the same scene in the late 80s and early 90s. And I was in a couple other bands, including the Riddlers and the Night Welders. And the Night Welders, most of the guys went out to San Francisco. I was thinking about leaving, and Ken cornered me at Johnny's Rockin' Bistro and said, "Don't go. I've got this great idea." Because Ken is like the Reuben Kincaid of everything. He's got all these great, ideas and all these, wacky business plans. And he says, "I got a thing where I want you to join this band and we'll do one single and then split up." I said, "Great." Well, we didn't split up, and we spent the next 10 years or so as the Hate Bombs. And I was in potential frenzy at the time. And then I said, okay, yeah. So I did both bands for a few months, and then I had to make a choice. It was a hard choice, but I ended up with these guys and don't regret it ever since. So my contribution to the Hate Bombs, well, my boyish good looks. And no, and
Burt Reynolds, stunt double.
just my contributions was I look at a band as a whole unit, and I think without the rest of the band I wouldn't contribute much. I rely upon throwing a bunch of ideas out there and then letting it all gel with the rest of the band. So like I said, I write some songs, I play some guitar, and I'm more of a front man than a guitar player. We had Mick Crowley as our original lead guitarist, and he was a genius. And, whatever, I came up with like a very impressionistic, idea, and these guys fleshed it out to make it, high, vivid, crazy Technicolor explosions. And, Mick was a big part of that. He would just put all these flourishes and details that were just,
color of the song.
just amazing. And these guys too, just everybody, contribute. So that I look at it more that way as far as contributions.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate that so much. And for those that may not be aware, Mick Crowley, he passed in 2022.
Right.
And so we'll talk about him, of course, because even though he's not here physically, I imagine his spirit is going to be with us for this episode here. So we'll definitely get into some of his story as well. Let's go over to Ken.
All right, I just got really sad. Yeah, I saw Mick Crowley at a party. This is my contribution to the Hate Bombs. I saw Mick Crowley at Jen DeWitt's 18th birthday party. Her and Mick were really good friends, and he was sitting in a circle playing acoustic guitar. He had a fringe jacket on, kind of like Neil Young would wear back in the early 70s of his career, or maybe even Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. And I saw this guy, and he was just playing every Beatles song from Revolver and Rubber Soul on an acoustic guitar. And I'm like, we got to get this guy. And, I got him in a band called Giant Man. So Scott and Mick and I were leftovers from Giant Man, grabbed Dave and formed the Hate Bombs. That was my idea that Dave was talking about earlier. So that's my contribution, as well as singing, writing songs, and playing drums. Starting out with Stumble, and when we got rid of the singer, kicked him out, we started the Green Today, and then after that it was Kick Sheila, Giant Man, then Hate Bombs. And I played with Jonathan Richman once or twice in between there and stuff like
A little thing like
but
that.
just things like that.
There was another band that I believe I don't know if you were a member of, but you may have played with. Was it the 7,000 Gifts?
Oh, I did play with 7,000. I was the original drummer in 7,000 Gifts, and then I said I was too busy with the Green Today, so I had to bail on that, and they got a couple drummers after me. Yeah, got old tape.
Thank you, Ken. And we'll wrap things up with Scott.
Hello, this is Scott. I played bass and sort of sang backup vocals in the Hate Bombs. And my approach, I didn't start playing any music, and I was a huge music fan. And I didn't start playing until I was like almost out of college when I started playing. And I was actually a huge fan of both of their bands. I was more of a fanboy. I was a fan of the Riddlers and the Green Today. I think Stumble was like my introduction to getting that cassette, was my introduction to the Orlando like underground music scene. Like I think prior to that, because I grew up in like Pine Hills, so like we were like isolated from the rest of the world. And my only understanding of local bands was like, oh, I heard Strangers playing at the Point After. So it was like I just figured that's what's out there. And then somebody turned me on to Stumble. And then
Probably Flanagan.
No, it was
No?
Gary Postel, actually.
Oh wow!
And then this is when I was at UCF, and I really got into all the local music scenes. And these guys were like already my heroes before we were ever in a band together. And oh, you forgot a band. Check this out. Okay, we're gonna drop this one on you. So I was in a band with a roommate of mine, Mike Flanagan. And we had a band called Dashboard Mary briefly, 6 months. And that's how I met Ken. He joined Dashboard Mary for like 3 months or something like that. And then we became friends. And then I became friends with Dave because I used to go see the Riddlers all the time. And, so when it was in Giant Man, we had Ken join. And then we discovered that Ken and I really liked the same kind of music and had the same vibe, same sense of humor. Then Mick joined, and the three of us like the same kind of music, same kind of sense of humor. And so I always got along with Dave. And then when Ken was like, we should get Dave and form a band, it was just like magic. Like it was like, oh, that guy's great. And we all just immediately got along. So it was just one of those things. I just always think it's funny though. I came at it from being a big local music fan, and these guys were already my music heroes. I loved the way they played. This is the other thing too, is nobody else played with their energy. And I always, like when I played, I'm a sloppy bass player. I like to jump around. I like to have, and Dave was of course a maniac as a lead guitar player. So, Ken, the first person I ever saw stage dive was Ken. And it was, that was that Hoodoo Guru show. It was insane. He like jumped like 90 rows into the and I'd never seen anybody do that before. And I was just like, holy moly. So I love their energy. And
Well, that's because I was singing with them.
yeah,
I
you
did
got up and
Stooges,
you
Search
got
and Destroy.
the Search and Destroy, and
And I swan dove. I didn't
Riddler.
dive backwards like you're supposed to. I
No, he
swan dove.
face forward into the crowd at the Beecham.
And they caught me.
Yeah, they did.
That's good that they caught you, because that could have ended very poorly.
Yeah,
I was a lot lighter back then.
so yeah, so so yeah, no, you can't do that now. But yeah, so yeah, yeah, exactly. But that was it. So I was a fan, and then getting to be in a band with these guys was like a dream come true, you know. So I would always, you know, love what they did. But I think a lot of it was the energy too. It was just like they played the way I thought you should play in a band. Like, don't just stand there.
Yeah.
Get out there and just, you know, punch someone in the face. It was great, metaphorically speaking.
Of course. So, who were some of the bands that you guys were listening to back then? And just as you were growing up and getting a little bit older, what were you listening to? And did you have a lot of common bonds as far as what bands and musicians that you did like back then?
I would assume so.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Start
I
with
mean,
Dave.
well, I mean, it's all, we were all old enough to be at the tail end of the 60s thing. I had older siblings, so I got a lot of that when I was growing up, you know, Beatles, Parvera Raiders, and even radio at back in that day was still playing like the Standells, and you know, so it wasn't that far removed. So 60s really resonated with me, as well as early punk rock stuff. You know, like I was a huge fan of the Buzzcocks. Love the Buzzcocks.
I got into the Buzzcocks because of you. That's why.
Yeah, I mean, and then power pop was happening as we were coming up, and you know, there was a whole 80s resurgence with the Paisley Underground in LA. There was the Cynics, you know, so that's what we really fed off of. And again, those guys were just a continuation of rock and roll. And I think rock and roll at its most core. And I think that, you know, that's what really motivated me. And again, you know, we all liked other stuff, like Ken's going to tell you, because he came up with that. We had a little pregame, so he'll kind of fill in on that. But 60s was kind of our focus, and you know, we honed that in a little bit more than what we originally started out to. But I'm going to let Ken goes next.
Yeah, my family grew up listening to just the typical 70s stuff. I was born 68, so I missed all the 60s. Family was listening to, like, one sister had, Debbie had Peter Frampton, Kiss. Sorry, we mentioned Kiss on your interview. Every band does for some reason. But it wasn't an influence. So there. Let's see. Queen, things of that nature. She was more of the harder rock, whereas, not Frampton, but Diane, my other sister, had more classical musical trainings and things like that. So she had, like, if she was going to have pop records, it would be Chicago because it had horns and she was in band. And Elton John has orchestrated more and things of that nature, Jim Croce and then you know, like things of that nature. So then my brother Doug, he was listening to Foreigner and Loverboy and stuff like that. So, you know, there you go. But so none of it really impressed me. I was playing sports. It didn't really affect me in the 70s that much. I'd harmonize with Elton John or try to sing along and stuff like that, but that's about it. My dad could sing. And so I kind of got a little bit of that. And then what happened was in 1980, John Lennon got shot. When John Lennon got shot, they flooded the radio, WDIZ flooded the radio with 24 hours of Beatles songs. And I thought it was the greatest thing I've ever heard. Like, maybe I'd heard those things every once in a while in the 70s, but it was constant. And then right from there, I dove into the 60s music. I got into the whole British invasion scene, everything. And I'm sitting there going, the Cars and the Police are kind of cool, but, you know, a little too slick. I kind of want to get into this punk rock thing, something about the energy I like, but I'm not pissed off. You know, I took out the trash when my parents told me to. I was in the suburbs. I was okay. I like my parents, you know. So it didn't really affect me like it affected everybody else until I heard the Jam. And Martin Everett from Naomi's Hair, he put on the Jam and said, listen to this. This is the modern world. My mind was blown. The imagery of the band, it tied in the 60s and punk rock perfectly. From there, I got into the Buzzcocks. From there, I got into the Clash. From there, I got into the Sex Pistols. From there, Ramones, American stuff, television, all the stuff. that was over here. Then and it just spiraled into this whole. It's all the same to me now. It's all just basics of rock and roll, like Dave said. And WOKY record in Waukesha, Wisconsin, was a big influence in the '70s because it was all '60s bands. It was a radio station, just a local record, and it blew my mind. It had like Chuck Berry. It had the Ventures, the Safaris. It had Dance to the Quarter to Three, Gary and the U.S. Bonds. It had some other garage classics on it. Psychotic Reaction by the Count Five, which is a Cramps cover. And it's like that album resonated with me. When I heard the Beatles, I said, that reminds me of that old album my mom and dad had, So it started in the 80s for me, 1980. So that was it.
Wow. I think for me, like, again, like I grew up in Pine Hills, just being like kind of culturally isolated. There was like nobody cool and I wasn't even remotely had any knowledge of almost any music or anything like this. This is what kills me is that I remember you were like 16. He was like into like Buffalo Springfield Love, like bands that in the 80s you couldn't just like find, and you and Marty and Paul were like in the Green, they were in the Green Today and Stumble, like their knowledge of music as teenagers, fairly young teenagers, was so different from everyone else. And I remember when I first got into your bands that I was like, I can't believe what I've missed. Like I was definitely late to the game. I was listening to what everyone else did. And I think by the time I got to high school, I think REM was probably like their early REM. And then I was like, wait, I really like the song. I really like the Byrds. I always liked 60s music. And that kind of was that was kind of a gateway to me because they would do covers of, Velvet Underground and whatnot. And that kind of, I was like, oh, wait, there's this other music. And then when I got turned on to local music and things like that, then I just kind of went whole hog on it and, really started getting into, the more obscure, the better, I guess. And so that was kind of, but honestly, like until I was like 18 or something like that, I had pretty average music taste. I was really into music, and I was exploring a lot of stuff. And I think I always liked stuff like the Yardbirds. I always liked the early Stones. I liked the Beatles up to Revolver, and that still holds true. And I think and things like that, and anything that I heard that sounded like that. So I think we all have that. And the other thing I think that in terms of like musical influences, that all three of us worked at record stores. So I think that there's that kind of seeking, wanting to work at a record store and wanting to find every record and explore music and things like that. That's something that we all had in common, that we were all just like hungry to hear something. So if somebody, someone in the band brought in like, some, record that we hadn't heard before, we would all just like devour it. So I think,
speaking about devour, he started out at Burger Chef. I worked at Burger King before our record store jobs.
I mowed yards.
Oh, okay. And then you used to work at a record store. Okay.
Yeah, then I worked at a record store.
So you're hungry for grass.
Oh, yeah.
I think the record store statement is a great segue because just as clubs, venues, places that a band could play are important, I feel like music stores are just as important. So let's talk about, if we can, where did you work as far as record stores, and perhaps tell us a little bit about that landscape when you were coming of age in the area, but also while the hate bombs were going on.
Up to you.
Oh, did you say Ken? I didn't hear you say Ken. Okay. I worked at Peaches Music and Video on Colonial Drive, where the Chipotle is now. And yeah, it's so important. I mean, we used to have in-stores. We had Bon Jovi in-store. We had the Smithereens in-store. XTC stopped in our store, which is crazy.
It's insane.
That's insane. And they didn't call me in on a Sunday. I was off, and I was a huge fan. And they didn't call me in because they didn't want me to fanboy out and freak out. And I'm like, oh, come on, man. I just got done opening for Alex Chilton. I'm okay. I can handle the celebrity thing. It's all right. I just got done playing with Camper Van Beethoven, man. Leave me alone. And 10,000 Maniacs, I could have handled it, But anyway, they didn't call any other employees in who were fans. And
you're not bitter about that at all.
Yeah, not at all. Yeah. Mark Michelle. Matthew Curtis. But yeah, so anyway, so yeah, it's a huge important thing. And I was in charge of the imports, which is where you get all the independent music. They threw all the domestic independent bands in the import section. They just called it imports because
PVC.
it was like lazy marketing, just like here, throw this weird stuff into the imports, because the imports are weird.
That's where you had to look. That's where you had to find.
And so that was huge for me. And I would buy one for the store, one for me. So it's like,
Working at a record store isn't like really working for money. It's like, it's more of
Working for
a company store kind of thing. You're a slave to that, and you just get paid in record
tokens.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You bought as much as you made. Yeah, for
pretty
sure.
much. Yeah.
I would go. Yeah, like record stores were great. I would go to Murmur Records being the one of the big ones for me, and that's where I met Eddie Fuller and Jim Leatherman.
Paul Muchler worked there.
Paul Muchler, yeah, and Eddie, he would every time I went in, he would recommend something, and it was always great, and he would describe it, and I'd be like, yeah, because he saw what I was buying. I bought a Stumble cassette, but he would see what I was buying, and then he would be like, oh, if you like that, check this out. He had no problem, just like and he would. I probably had like half dozen, cassettes that were his recommendations, and I think that was also working at a record store. You would be able to kind of impart your knowledge on people. I would go to where Dave worked because it was out by UCF, and so I'd go in and see Dave. And he always had some recommendations. It just felt like but that's also where you found out about local music as well. Like that's how I found out about the Riddlers and all those bands, because somebody would be like, oh, you like these guys, they played with these guys, here you go.
And from around the world, because you could get magazines there, independent magazines. Like Bucket Full of Brains was a huge influence on me. That's from England. And a lot of Americana music that I was getting into that was 60s sounding, like the Paisley Underground, like Dave mentioned, was overseas getting more notoriety than it was here. And so I would pick up the magazine, and just whoever was in this magazine was always spot on. So I bought everything.
Oh yeah,
so magazines were huge before you could find it on the internet or anything.
Yeah,
so.
I was a fiend for. I would go to the the zine section, and I would just come back with a stack of stuff. The Bob, was that one? Remember that one?
Bob's
a newspaper that covered like every like Australian 60s influenced music that
came with a flexi.
You would never hear about. So that was the thing. And then you'd go through the ads and order records and things like
Flexi pop.
And
that was awesome.
But I loved all that. That was probably like half the haul. I'd get albums, but then I would also get a bunch of magazines and stuff, because I wanted, again, you wanted to find out more. Like, it was like, well, I love this band. I don't have enough money to buy like 12 albums, but I can buy, I can spend $2 and buy this zine, which of course down the road would end up costing you, hundreds of thousands of dollars, because you would buy everything that you read about that was awesome. So yeah, that was record stores played it. That was it. I mean, that was massively how we heard about everything, was at the record store.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, very, very important, locus for information about local scenes, and that's the glue that kept the local scenes together. Was that it was a meeting place.
When your band played, you put your own flyer up, and then people would come in with your show, and it would be like, yeah. So.
I mean, the Riddlers were recruited from when I worked at Wax Street.
I think you asked me to be in the Riddlers one time.
I think so. I've asked it. I was just like, hey, you want to be in band? But yeah, I started. As a kid, I would like ride my bike. I lived over in Maitland, so I rode my bike over to Record City. This would be a ritual with my buddies. We'd go to Record City, where right across from where the caboose or the station. Well, it was the caboose first. And then
really
was it? Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't.
Yeah. My mom saw Sonny Turner from the Platters at the caboose.
What?
Yeah.
But I bet you don't know what the place ended as before it got destroyed. We'll talk about that later.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Part two, Jeff.
And then,
I mean, you piqued the interest. So what did
we've seen some stuff. Then we'd ride our bikes over to Backtrack Records in the Zara Plaza on 436 and 1792. Tom Cat McCollin and Brian Christie's. Yeah, they will work there. And he had like underground comics in the back. So that was really crazy shit back then too. Sorry. And then but I did a lot. It was funny because like I was very cheap. I got, Scotch Irish background.
So wow.
Same.
I would go to the budget bin over at Record City and you could get Devo records for like $2 or whatever. And then go to Backtrack and I didn't really
And
have
sell
a
'em.
big record collection. No, seriously. I would like it was almost more of a library than it was a record store because like I constantly just went through my record collection and never had more than 100 records at a time because I would get them and I'd listen to them and I'd take a bunch back and then I'd buy another batch. And and then later on, Armadillo Records came with Craig Michaels. Then I met Bob Ponder through Retro Records over on Bumby, which is still there. But
Is it really?
It is still there.
I bought all my cons there for like
Steve-
$3.
Steve Gordy later purchased it from Bob Ponder, but Steve Gordy had passed away. Steve Gordy was your algebra teacher?
Yeah. Yeah.
We
We had a great relationship when I was buying Beatle records for him. And then all of a sudden I got in his class and go, this is going to be easy. Worst thing ever. Worst teacher ever.
But anyway, that's our experience with record stores. But yeah, they were the lifeblood of a scene, and because that's where everybody would congregate. That's where bands would be formed, and that's where your main line of communication was through flyers and zines and all sorts of stuff. It was a great thing.
You had mentioned zines and a couple different ones, especially that may have been outside of Florida, perhaps in the US or even globally. When you think about things more on a local level, and these could have been fanzines, they could have been a magazine of some kind, could have even been a newspaper or anything else along those lines. What do you remember about those publications that were important to the Hate Bombs story, that were getting the word out, helping to really build that awareness for what the band was doing? What comes to mind?
This is interesting. In my memory, this is really interesting, is because by the time the Hate Bombs formed, at least by the time the Hate Bombs formed, oddly, the Sentinel had good local music coverage. There was a couple of writers that were on the scene, and I think Ken was a little bit. Let's just say Ken was a little bit of a local celebrity. He played with Jonathan Richman for a couple of shows, and his name would. And oddly, the Sentinel would post local scene stories. So that was a weird thing for a short period of time, probably through like the mid '90s or something. There was
Tom
Duffy, and Perry Gettleman. And Perry Gettleman loved Ken. And so it was this very so that kind of kept, so you actually could see your name in the local paper, which was weird, aside from weirdly from the Sentinel having stuff, but the magic of, especially for these zines that covered, was seeing reviews of bands from Orlando in a publication, and to my mind, because in back in the day, like it was like a printed piece from another city, even if it was like, Fort Lauderdale or whatever. It just was like, oh, well, this is legit. Like, it was like when you saw somebody in there, and then they were reviewing bands that you were like, well, I'm going to go check these bands out. So I think that was kind of a big deal to me, at least, to see that. And then those weird things when you would see zines from outside of the state, Maximum Rock and Roll, Flipside, mention local bands. That's when it was what was it, Option, that was another nationally distributed zine, and you would see those in there, and it was kind of mind-blowing to see that, oh, I know that guy and I know that band, and they're being reviewed, whether the review was good or bad, and it was kind of cool. So I think for me there was like that. I think there was some magic in that, as far as feeling like there was something happening, and you always, this is when scenes were a thing, and the Athens scene, the Austin scene, the Boston scene, the whatever, and everybody always wanted to think that they were the next scene, you know, and I thought, well, you know, why not Orlando? You know, you like, you know, there wasn't, but
We're waiting for it. We're waiting.
we're still waiting for it. 40 years later, still waiting for it. But you know, so I felt, you know, there was something to that though, and
Well, we tried.
it was cool to see. It was cool to see, you know, that someone outside of you and your friends actually cared enough to review a music that you know was on a cassette, you know, cassette only or whatever. So yeah, that's kind of my take. I think was
The other cool thing about the zine thing was that you used to have to go to the back to get addresses to these bands and then write the band and say, hey, we want to play in your town. You want to play here? You know, that kind of thing.
you wrote letters,
You wrote letters. You wait a week before the transaction's complete.
and then
Now
eventually
it's like, hey, Joe,
we exchange
Zoom.
exchange phone numbers
Yeah.
eventually, you know, and then be like,
Yeah.
oh, give me a call.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, we eventually, when you got a call from someone or they, you know, they gave you their phone number, you were like, whoa.
Yeah.
That was a big deal.
Without an area code.
I want to know if this is true or false. I had read that one of the earliest shows that the Hate Bombs did was opening up for another local band, Rocket 88, at the Junkyard in Castleberry.
One of the earliest.
Mm.
Our very first was a Space Fish show with the Nicotines, which became Nutrijet. Well, Greg
With Screaming Iguanas of
and
Love before
Screaming
that.
Iguanas of Love. It might have been Screaming Iguanas on that flyer.
I think
In
I think
93.
it was.
It
Yeah, no,
was the
it was,
Screaming
yeah.
Iguanas of Love. Greg
Yeah.
Reinell's Screaming Iguanas.
They were
of
from
Love.
they were from over on.
Yeah,
That's
he,
when
he
East
did it.
Coast.
He did a Reinell one. He did a Reinell show.
that's when Greg still had the Todd Rundgren long hair.
Yeah, yeah.
It was his power pop.
He had the
days.
rooster haircut.
before he went punk.
He rocked it, man.
Yeah, it's awesome. So so Rocket 88 was one of our earliest shows, and it probably was at the Junkyard, if not the Social.
Or the Sapphire.
Or
Was the
Sa-
Junkyard a venue that was known to have shows like that?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
opened for Dick Dale there.
Yeah. It kind of went through this brief phase for a couple of years where they were playing really cool shows, and then it kind of just, I don't know what happened to it, but it kind of fizzled out. But yeah, we played with Dick Dale, we played with local bands.
Yeah.
I think I think because Rocket 88, like we were obviously friends with those guys,
Mhm.
but I think we had a commonality of playing like, you know, pre-70s music, I guess, so we ended up, you know, joining forces and you know, and we both had like good live shows, and there was a lot of crossover between the garage fans and the rockabilly fans.
Well, because it was all that's like when retro was first
yeah,
coming out. You all got, if you weren't playing,
The Retro Records.
you know, yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you weren't playing like
Not a
a
style.
Pearl Jam ripoff band, then you were clumped into this whole retro thing, you know. It's,
well, that's also, I was thinking of too, but like when Pulp Fiction came out, that strangely had a huge bump for us because that had, you know, Link Ray, it had, you know, this kind of, you know, very retro vibe to it, and people just kind of lumped us in because we got called surf band all the time, and
Yeah.
we played like one instrumental, and it would always be like the Hate Bombs, this kind of
No, the worst,
retro
the worst,
surf
the
band.
worst,
Surfabilly
the worst mix. Surfabilly is the
Surfabilly.
absolute worst thing you could call it.
Yeah, surfabilly. We're like,
because
what?
we're not
even a
even.
thing.
We're not either.
Yeah,
But people, you know, they don't know, and they're trying to come up with a phrase, and so that was the thing. And
we were more instrumental than
Right.
surf.
but you had a lot of that crossover, and then the rockabilly crowd, you know, was really into Pulp Fiction, obviously, and so we had I remember there was a couple of years around that really we saw like a surge in at least local interest. I think people, you know, because it was like that was what was hot, and so people would come out and, oh, you guys, you know, wear bowling shirts and have rockabilly hair or whatever.
I could do the Uma Thurman tryst to you guys.
What yearabouts was the band first starting to play some of these early shows?
93.
93.
We formed in like July of 93.
Meh.
Okay.
Yeah, it was.
Well, yes, 93.
I
And
think the single came out in June or July.
and then
This was quick.
we really got, I think we kind of hit our stride, you know, starting around 94. I think that's when, because we were playing pretty small shows. Like we played, I don't know, we played
Johnny's Rockin' Bistro.
Johnny's
and-
Rockin' Bistro.
And Club Spacefish and basically
The-
Johnny's Rockin'
The
Bistro.
Club Space was when it was at
If you-
the Beach Club.
They got
Yeah.
rid of the notes section on Facebook on our site, and I don't know where those shows are, but it's
I have-
all Johnny's Rockin' Bistro.
You want me to bring them up?
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad you got it. Cool.
I have it.
So and then 94 was when things broke open because we contacted the Woggles from Athens, and then it went
So to put context into it, so for in the timeline, talking about like, how we did things in the kind of late 80s, early 90s, there started to be a garage, what they call garage punk revival nationally. So you had Estrus Records, which was a record label out of Bellingham, Washington, and there was like bands like the Mummies and the Makers, the Woggles, and that kind of got big outside of that. And then there were these bands in this like Manor Astroman, the Woggles, which were from the Southeast. And that was kind of happening around the same time that the Hate Bombs had started. So you started having this national, in pockets, these national things of similar minded bands. So for us, we weren't really aware of that. Like we were saying, we were fans of Pittsburgh's the Cynics. We were fans of the Liars from Boston. Like those bands had been around for a long time or a while. And we all liked those bands. We weren't really aware of some of these bands, like we weren't really aware of the Mummies until later. And we were talking about this earlier. We still remember going to, what was that? It was
Blue Chair
Records in Tampa with Paul Mutchler, who's now in the Bell Towers and was in Green Today. And Ken and I, like, they had this huge bin of, I want to say they were discount records, but it was all this neo garage, for Estrus records. There's records from Germany, records from the Netherlands, of all these neo garage bands that were coming out in the early 90s. And I honestly think we each came out with a stack of records. And I remember you and I just like bringing them back to like your place, and like we were putting them on, like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like every record was awesome. And we were just like, what is happening? Then we found there was a zine that was from like, there were a couple of zines, but it was one zine was, I think, from the Netherlands that we had, which I still have. And it was just listed like all these bands from Europe. It listed all these bands from the United States. Yeah. And we had no idea that this stuff, and it just kind of like opened our mind within a few months of the Hate Bombs forming. So we suddenly got turbocharged as to this other scene that was going on. And then we like made it our mission to like reach out to these bands, and it made a lot of sense. And I remember our first single was called Peckinpah Man, and we sent out that to all these bands, and we heard back from Manfred, who's the singer of the Woggles, goes by the Professor Mighty Manfred, still around.
Doing a radio show on Little Steven's
Underground. He's still at it. And they got back to us, and he was like, man, I love, basically it was like, I love your record. We should do shows. And they were in Athens, Georgia. So we started swapping shows with those guys, like come down to Florida and we'll set you up, and we'll do, you come up and play up in Athens.
And he'd already been doing it. So he'd set the kind of price of what you need to make it up there, and then they need to make it down here to make the gas worth it and the whole bit. He'd already been doing this. So he kind of like taught us like, oh, this is what you do.
Well, and
and it was great.
And the other thing too is that they were also similar, like, and I was saying earlier that what I liked about these guys is playing with them was their energy, and we had no problem jumping off stage or rolling around on the stage and crashing into each other. It was like high energy, and the Woggles were the same. The Woggles had this high energy show, and so we immediately were like, and became basically like brother bands with those.
I think we honed off of each other too. It's one of those things where we'd always try to up the ante, and well, they kicked our ass this time, we're going to get them next time, and there's always this thing, and that just made you better. And I think that really, that and the volume that we played back then, we played a lot back then.
And those two bands, Woggles and Hate Bombs, were very influenced by the stage moves and stage ideas from the Fleshtones.
Yes.
The Fleshtones, we started in '76 up in New York City.
And still at it.
And still at it. And they're going to be on the cruise with the Woggles coming up here in about a week or two.
They're playing a music cruise.
The Little Stevens garage cruise.
Right. So yeah, just that major digression there. But that essentially, we started networking with all these other bands around the Southeast in Atlanta. Like the Subsonics were a band from Atlanta that we became friends with, Chapel Hill, and then some bands, in locally, like up in, like Pensacola and Tampa and Jacksonville, we started bands would either find us or we'd find them somehow, and that became a thing. But it was all letter. It was all literally letter. I can remember sitting in Ken's dining room with stacks of records, writing letters. We just take a piece of paper and be like, "I love your record label. Here's our record," and just send it off like shot in the dark, and people responded. It's crazy how just putting something in the mail with a hope and a prayer, and I guess it was good enough that it got us somewhere, that with us, and as we started putting out more records and started playing further and further afield, then we started getting stuff from further away where there would actually be, people from like California, New York, Texas, and then people from overseas. It was pretty nuts.
And I think too, that also kind of goes into the next segment of not only did we have this network that we played, but there was a lot of festivals based around this movement. So we were able to play and do, instead of touring like a mass, let's get in a van and go to 50 cities. We did a more concise strike. It was just like, okay, we're going to do a weekender and we're going to do like 5 gigs around that or whatever. It was something that was more targeted, and we would get bigger crowds. And, we did play those shows where we went to Baltimore one time and we played like 2 guys and a dog.
I think that's being generous. We played to nobody, I think. But then,
he had a 9353 shirt on. Remember?
I think he was
Homestead Record Band.
I think he worked there. But then, the next day we played at Maxwell's, with the Flesh Tones and the Woggles.
Yeah.
And then we played CBGB's right after that.
Yeah.
So it was like, up and down, as things go.
Like when you did a short blast of a tour like that, it made those, you go on the road for 50 days and you get a shitty audience for like 49 of those,
and you end up hating each other.
Yeah. And so and that's why probably we stayed together so long, is because we didn't have to be cooped up in a van.
Right.
And
it wasn't miserable because we had crowds, because we were smart about it.
Yeah. And those festivals were a big part of that.
Quality over quantity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, because we had 40-hour-a-week jobs, each one of us.
Yep.
So that was our philosophy, was to look like we're busier than we are. We did play 3 shows, though.
When you were playing a lot of the shows in the Central Florida area, or just in Florida in general, who do you remember the people who were helping to get you guys a lot of those shows?
Jim
Jim Faraday.
Obviously Jim Faraday.
Jim Faraday from Figurehead.
Locally. And then there was, in Tampa, there was a band called the Baskervilles.
Mhm.
Rob and Laura were in the Baskervilles, and they were, we traded shows with them, and that was good. Then up in Jacksonville, there was a band called The Harmonious Fist, or a bunch of high school kids that played, that were super big fans of Manor Astroman and Estrus Records and Garage Rock. And we invited them down to do a show one time, and then they just, we're still friends with those guys. They're like, they're like adults now, but they were like these crazy kids that we knew, and we would get, and play shows with them. And oh gosh, like down in Miami was like Chuck Loose, like down in the guys in the Crumbs. We knew those guys. So there were like other bands. There was definitely promoters. There was that guy in Tallahassee that we did some shows with. He was really great.
Strychnines?
No, with Pensacola, there's a band called the Strychnines, and a guy named Elvis who ran a record store.
Still has it.
He still has it. That's right. It's up in Pensacola, and we would do shows up there. And there were like, local promoters, and then, and even in the pre-Hate Bomb days, there was always these like one-off clubs you'd play, like in DeLand or Daytona Beach or something. And those were more like, oh, hey, I opened up a coffee shop. Can you come and play? Can you come play our coffee shop? And we go in there and wreck it. And, that would be it. So, but I think, a lot of it, I think mostly, and the thing that I think that was a difference is that I think when we were in the previous bands, is that we were always like, well, we have to call the club and we have to talk to the promoter. And the one big turning point for us being in the Hate Bombs is like, no, let's just contact other bands and use their contacts, and they will set up the shows. And I know that sounds like really elementary, but we didn't know that. And so like trading shows with other bands who had a similar sound. That's the other thing too. Okay, so this is the other thing. in other bands we played with, you would be like when we were in Giant Man, it was so we were like this kind of jangly indie band, and you would play with like I don't know like Fudge Tunnel or something, some horrible, like, and it would just be like they always were like, well, you're alternative and you're alternative. They would just put like the most like ridiculously incongruent bands together, and we were like, no, we're gonna do this. We're gonna play shows with other bands that have a similar vibe. So we would play with Rocket 88. We played with this country punk band called Psycho from Texas. We played with the Exotic Aaron
The Lears.
The Lears. So
The Lears from Tampa.
so we would play with these other local bands that had the same 60s sound and feel, or at least influences. And and that was so much better. Like people and audiences love that. Like it wasn't like you had to hear of three bands that sounded exactly alike. You had three bands that had the same vibe, and it just made for a lot better shows. And we were just like, that's how we should do it. So that's how we found the Baskervilles, very garagey, and the Harmonious Fist, super garagey sounding, or if they were like punk rock bands like the Crumbs or something, we'd be like, oh, okay, those guys have a similar. Or what was that band from? Oh gosh, I can't think of the Outrights. The Outrights.
Oh, the Outrights.
The Outrights from South Florida.
That was the infamous Churchill show.
Yeah, the Outrights. They were in high school, literally in high school.
With Fay Ray.
And
You said it was the infamous Churchill show. So what was it about that show that stands out in your memory?
Oh, wow.
So there was this band called Fay Ray, and some of the guys from the Psycho Daisies were there. So I was really chuffed because I was a huge fan of the Psycho Daisies and the chant and the scene back in the 80s, and so that was cool to see them. And then Fay Ray got on stage and played, and we're sitting at the merch table, and the singer shaves his head on stage, right? Shaves his head, completely bald.
He was out totally out.
And then he signaled us. He looked at us, and he just charged off the stage and did a backflip onto our merch table, and all the merch just went like that, and the table cracked in half. And Scott just picks the table and throws it on him. It's just like,
yeah,
thanks.
we were just like, we were pretty outraged at that.
Don't know why. No idea. Maybe he saw that we didn't like his band and our faces, but
and we did. We hated it. And then when after we finally got on and we did the show, and then the guy from
Robbie's brother.
Yeah, the guy from he needs to behave himself. But I think they actually took that guy away in an ambulance.
They did.
He cracked his head open and was like knocked out. And
so me and Scott look at each other. I was like, should we kick his ass? No, he's already knocked out.
Yeah, he's already knocked out.
He's done the job.
So, and then the only thing I also remember about the show is we got on, and then one of the guys from the Psycho Daisy came, and it was very sad. He was very
frail at that point.
Drugs had just done this guy in. He was like mostly not coherent. And I think we started doing what you gonna
Small
do
Faces, what you gonna do
about Small Faces, and he was singing, and he just kept going, what you gonna do about it? And it just wouldn't end. And finally this guy, Mr. Entertainment, had to come up and like gently escort him off the stage, because it was just like 8 minutes into it, and we're like, this is never gonna end. This guy's not getting off the stage, because he was just like zoned out. And then like everything about that, and Churchill's is a great club.
It was awesome.
But and the show actually ended up being pretty cool. We had a really good time, but it was just, and I think that was one of Mick's last shows. Mm-hmm. So, and Mick had kind of gotten tired of being in the band, and wanted to move on, and I think we had all realized that, and so that made that show especially contentious.
To the credit though, like the rest of the guys in Fay Ray were really cool, and like the one guy was like really apologetic.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, the other guys in the band,
they're super cool. And then the weirdest thing at the very end of the show is the people clearing out. We were packing our instruments up. This guy came in a wheelchair, and you remember Churchill's had like the whole chicken bones in the window, so there was a lot of hoodoo
kind of voodoo things going on.
Voodoo happening.
So this old guy in this wheelchair slowly wheeled himself up to the stage, and then he had a paper bag in his
newspaper
room.
Yeah, newspaper.
And he swept up the guy's hair, And then he
The guy who shaved his head.
wheeled himself
Yeah.
out. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe he's got a voodoo doll or something going.
He collected the guy's hair and put it into.
It was creepy.
Yeah.
It was weird, man. It was just like this. Whoa!
We couldn't wait to get the hell out of there, but yeah,
But it was fun. Show.
We didn't see Iggy Pop. We're really bummed because we heard he hangs out there.
that was our Miami experience.
I was going to ask, did you have any other trips down after a show like that?
Southern Culture.
Yeah.
We toured with Southern Culture on the
Oh,
skit.
I didn't. That was after
Yeah.
me.
That was after.
We did a reunion show in like what 2005
Yeah, at the Hollywood Hard Rock.
The Hard Rock it was part of the Little Steven. It was like I don't know, it was like Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp where we did a show with the Romantics and Super Suckers, and we played poolside at the Hollywood Hard Rock Cafe and Casino poolside. Complete opposite of the Churchill's experience. So
We're
that was
put up in hotel rooms and fed and drinks and money. It was all good.
much. That
Little
was
Steven treats you like gold.
yeah. It was much. It was probably like it was like after the Hate Bombs had officially broken up. So this was a reunion show. So those are our weird.
He was impressed enough to put out a record by us too, but Scott had to go. So
It's all my fault.
One of the bands you had mentioned a little while ago was the Baskervilles. And I think back to one of the first times that I heard that band, but also one of the earliest times I heard the Hate Bombs was on a compilation called The Young Savage Florida. What do you remember about that compilation and just some of the bands that were on there? I think a lot of them were local to the area at the time too, in the mid 90s.
Running Hide and One Inch Punch.
Yeah,
Those were both on there. Yeah.
Oh, was that Car Bomb Driver was on that record?
Yeah,
too.
Yeah,
That was
Car Bomb
they were a
Driver.
great band.
No, that's another great band.
Yeah.
Chicks Don't Dig Me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's our memory of the show?
There was
Or
there was
the CD?
the CD. I think the CD was cool because
Yeah.
it was a mix of I think Tampa and some Orlando bands, I guess area bands from the area, and of course, and then they had a show to launch the record, which was a pretty funny show.
The State Theater in St.
Yeah,
Pete.
I believe we did get cut off in that one. They actually unplugged us because they ran out of time.
We ran out of time. We were last.
We were last, and they pulled the plug on us during
Was
that.
that
show.
the first time playing the State Theater?
Yes.
I think it's the only
No,
time.
we played a Southern Culture there too.
Again after.
After.
Oh, yeah.
That wasn't the real
Yeah.
band.
Well, see what you missed out.
Cheers, Scott.
I'd already moved away, so I
It's
missed.
like, what are we talking about that for?
Yeah,
When you all were together and you played the State Theater, just what was that experience like? Because I imagine that was one of the larger venues at the time.
It was fantastic.
it was big. It was a big show.
Yeah.
Yeah, big show. I remember there was,
They just ran out of time. We got cut off a little bit.
Yeah.
Not much.
but there was like, that was one of our bigger shows. I think.
Yeah, that was a pretty big show. I think the Westbeth Theater in New York when we played that garage style thing or whatever.
Oh, the Bluebird in Denver.
Yeah,
That was huge.
a lot of those festivals. Again, we had shitloads of people at those things.
Yeah.
And,
The festivals were always good because you got to play, like if we played in Chapel Hill or whatever.
Yeah,
We would play in like an audience that was like 10 times bigger than what we were used to playing.
yeah.
Locally. And not again, we had, there was a solid period where we had like a lot of people would come out to the shows and, but like any local band, you'd play enough, you have shows where hardly anyone shows up. And then you have shows, where mysteriously everyone shows up. And, so, playing I feel like we always had in Tampa, we always had these memorable shows. I can think of at least 2 shows in Tampa where fights broke out. We remember that. I don't know what the name of the club was. We played with.
Yeah, we played Jezebel, and then the fight broke out.
Yeah, but what was it? Was this little club we
Every
played,
time we played Jezebel,
and a fight broke out, and I just remember Dave like these guys. It was like these 2 big bully dudes were messing with these smaller dudes, and our friend Aaron Jarvis was roading for us, and
Aaron Jarvis from the Delusionaires.
Delusionaires, right?
Yeah.
And so he was a big dude, and so he kind of stepped in, and then next thing you know, I look over and Dave had jumped on this other guy, was like riding his back, like putting the guy in a sleeper hold, and so Mick and Ken and I just kept playing. We were just like, well, there goes Dave. And basically Dave and Aaron just like mopped up the floor with these guys and they ended up throwing them out of the club.
That's a great thing because I was pretty non-essential as far as like playing, so I could just do anything.
Yeah, like Dave didn't have to like, he didn't have to be doing anything.
I was the monkey with the guitar.
Kind of like Chrissy Hines. She can take her guitar off and just sashay across the stage.
And so Dave's version of that
fight
is jumping on somebody and beating the crap out of them. So yeah, I'd say that I feel like, I mean, I feel like Tampa, we had a few times. So maybe people were just more keyed up in Tampa, but we had,
it's aggro.
Aggro. But we had
I got asked in Tampa if I was a skinhead, and
you're
he
like,
goes, "Hey brother, are you a skinhead? Why you call me brother?" No, I'm a bald head. My genetics determine the skin quotient on my head. I mean, come on, man.
He was just bald.
He's like,
"Oh, I swear I've seen you before. Oh, do we fight together against us?"
No, man. It's like we're more Louie. Don't let the name hate bombs throw you off.
That's the other thing too. We got to address the whole hate bombs thing.
That's a great thing to bring up because I was wondering, did that ever bring about any controversy of any kind?
Yeah.
The band's name.
I remember we couldn't
Purposely misspelling our name so it wouldn't be offensive in San Francisco, where the H ate bombs on the marquee.
And then the next time we
plenty of room for the whole name.
The next time we played San Francisco, we were the Hate as in Hate Ashbury bombs. So
and like we couldn't mention the name of our band at airports if we flew somewhere.
Yeah, for fear of cavity searches.
Because we'd show up in suits and ties. We wanted to look the part. We did the whole thing, we wanted the notoriety. But then we didn't think about the name because it doesn't seem weird to us. And we'll go into why it was more palatable the other way, and we shortened it to the hate bombs. I'll tell you that in a minute. But when we went to the airport, we're like, what do we do? We can't, why are we even trying to publicize ourselves if we can't say our band name? And so we'd be like, oh, we're the have-nots. Or something like that.
We're Bon Jovi. Yeah, we would come up with
names. Come up and ask us.
Yeah, we would like show up. We'd be dressed to the nines, carrying our guitars and whatnot, and people would be like, "Oh, you guys must be in a real band." And then we'd tell them, and they'd be like scratching their heads because they couldn't Google us or anything, so we could make up any band name. So
like,
there you
go. Flight attendant. What they call them now. Back in the day, they didn't call them flight attendants.
Sexy Steve.
And so she comes up and she goes, everybody on the plane's asking what band you guys are. And I'm sick of getting asked this. Would you please tell me your band name? I said, I just said it. We're the Hate Bombs. She looked at me, she goes, I can't say that. And I go, you asked.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Was that the original name of the band though?
Okay, so Carol Benanti was saying at a party, a girl's throwing invisible hate bombs at me.
Hate darts.
No, she said bombs.
She just said
because I would have used darts. That would have been better.
Yeah.
It would have been less offensive.
Jarts would have been better.
Yeah, jarts.
But still dangerous.
So
or sharks.
And then I brought it to the guys. I said, hey guys, what do you think of invisible hate bombs? We're looking for a name. This was like in the first month. And everybody said short.
Because
let's shorten it because it looked shorter on marquees. And then we'd be close to the head coats and record bins, which is the band we were like really that started our sound.
That's one of the cool things about it. Is that I was saying this earlier with the guys,
the connection,
how having like I've been in a few other bands and I never thought that we quite dialed it in. And then when the hate bombs, like Dave, our first practice, Dave brings Peckinpah Man, first song, he plays it, and I was like, oh my god, this song is amazing. This is the sound of the band I want to be in. And then when we determined the name was the Hate Bombs, I was like, that's the band. Like it wasn't like a lame name, it was like a really good name, and we were just like, man, this is for me at least, I was like, this is the sound I want, and this is the band name I want. I was literally not thinking about any repercussions.
Scott was ready to kick ass in his life. Scott had a point. That was it. He was ready to go.
I did.
He was ready to.
And it was just like that perfect convergence of like all the stuff that I liked, and these guys we were all just into it. It was,
Ken in our meeting that I alluded to earlier, like was pitching the idea. He says, we're just going to do a single and then break up. I said, "Oh, great! Then I can go move on and stuff." And then he goes, and we were kind of brainstorming. I go, "Yeah." So we call up these radio stations and record stores and go, "Do you have the whatever our name is going to be?" And then when they'd say no, we'd say, "Well, fuck you," and hang up, you know. And then so we were just coming up with silly stuff like that. And so you know, we did the hate bombs, and that kind of fit with that motif. And I guess that was that. And I didn't think really too much of it because that we were just going to break up after that. But then, you know, like Scott said, we all got together and we did Peckinpah Man, and Peckinpah Man had some good reception. We even got reviewed in Maximum Rock and Roll, and I was the growly mean guy vocal.
Probably mean guy vocals.
And so yeah, and so I thought, well, punk rockers are calling me a growly mean guy. And I'm not even trying to be punk. Then I guess that's.
But we had like that. It was like that. Yeah, pretty immediate, like legitimate. I remember I still have a recording of the Maximum Rock and Roll radio show where they played our single, in you know, because they would I guess license it out to like WPRK, and they would play the Maximum Rock and Roll, and we got played on that. You know, I remember it was like, you know, whatever, summer of '93 or whatever, and I'm like, oh my god, we got played on the Maximum Rock and Roll radio show. This is amazing, you know. And you know, they were like, and of course the funny part, I think I remember this, is they were like, they're from Orlando, Florida, like every, and that was like a recurring theme. Is anytime we played out of town, people were like, whoa, where you guys kick ass, where you guys from? And we'd be like, Orlando, and they'd be like, Orlando,
are you Dumbo?
Yeah, they'd be like, oh, do you work at Disney? Like, it was like
constant
the reputation of Orlando.
You don't have fans.
Yeah,
stupid.
Speak for yourself. The Orlando
naturally
the Orlando show, you know, the Orlando thing, like just always just like all across the country, people would just be like, Orlando. We'd be like, and then, you know, part of our mission too is to bring other bands in. So we would swap these shows. We would bring these cool bands from the Northeast and California and wherever, and they would bring them to Orlando, and they would just be like, oh my God, Orlando, this is amazing. Like, the super dedicated crowd. People knew their music. They knew their garage rock. They knew how to have a good time. And, you know, we paid them well, and they always had great bands would come back. And so that was kind of a cool thing to kind of spread a little bit of that. Like, yeah, you know, there might not, you know, Orlando doesn't have, like, as a cultural center, didn't have this reputation or anything, but being in a band that they liked, and it was from Orlando, and, you know, I think we contributed, you know, if anything, I think we contributed to that, you know, spreading it.
We contributed to the fact that it's like, okay, we can go to Orlando.
Yeah,
that's what the rest of the country was like. Wow, okay, we can make it down there and make it worth our while. Because think about the map. You just want to stay on 10 and go from Pensacola and Tallahassee over to Jacksonville and keep going up. You don't want to be too far away from Atlanta. If you go to Florida, that's a $300 loop to go.
Well, you think about, like, you know, or like South Florida too. Like, you have to make a commitment to go into the
like you better tour the whole state.
It's a long drive.
It is a long drive. So just
and we get accused of being a cultural wasteland, as I'm sure you have the same vibe that we do. I mean,
there's been many different ways people have described Florida.
Yeah.
So we looked at ourselves as like, you know, cultural emissaries for Orlando. You know, we're saying, hey, come on here. It's not that bad.
It's actually a cool place.
And then we'd play with a couple other local bands that were like us, like Delusionaires or Lears or Nicotines or Nutrijet or somebody like that. And then we'd have that on the bill as well. And then somebody'd go, whoa, there's more than one.
Yeah.
There's actually 2 or 3 bands or 4 bands. And then they started playing with some other bands. So really, it caused like this little kind of, you know,
mushroomed out.
Yeah, mushroomed out, and everybody kind of got their own bands to come down after a while and stuff. So, yeah, and we got the 5, 6, 7, 8s from Japan. So.
Yeah, we did a lot of.
Yeah.
When you had mentioned Peckinpah Man, which is the first single 7-inch of the Hate Bombs, I know there's a lot more that the band put out. There's always something special, I feel like, about the very first release. Talk about some of your memories of recording the 2 songs that are on that, the studio, and any good stories you may have from just that experience.
Studio was Ken's house.
Yeah, it was a foyer of my house and the living room.
It was
the foyer had the echo.
Yeah, it was the own echo chamber.
It was recorded on a 4-track
cassette,
you know. and recorded. But we wanted that, we wanted that kind of lo-fi sound.
Mhm.
And by default, we got it because it's all we had access to.
Our- Our late great guitar player, Mick's buddy Jerry,
Jerry
recorded,
Richardson.
brought his four
Yep.
track over and recorded
he
us.
recorded us, and
Absolutely.
I think that we'd in other bands we'd recorded in studios, but we made a conscious effort to say we want to do this ourselves and not have to. We didn't want it to sound slick. We wanted to maintain the energy that we liked about it live. And so I think that and I think with like all our singles, like that one to me like really does capture the live spirit of the Hate Bombs. It's just kind of this kind of high energy ramshackle.
Dave wrote that, and I think it's the best garage song ever written.
You're just
Peckinpah. No, I'm
It's a
serious.
great, no, it's a
The
great song.
content, the chord structure, the lo-finess, the doubled guitar solo. Where'd that come
Two
from?
guitar solos.
Where'd that come from?
In a garage song.
Yeah, and it's just, and it's still within 3 minutes. It's like,
And it's just one of those, and just talking about our own songs, but like it was just one of those songs where like the riff on it, like I still hear it, and when Ken kicks in the drums on it, we play it live. I still like probably do the exact same move that I did in 1993. Like I would play it now, and I'd hear it. Dave would play the na 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 na, bop, then Ken hits the thing, and I every time I do it, I'm like jump, and
Yeah.
I still move the same way, and it still moves me the same way it did from the nanosecond I heard it, when Dave brought it to practice.
And Mick's solo and that just rips
It's
through
insane.
like
Rip.
raw power.
yeah.
It's like that James Williamson and raw power when he rips into
Yeah.
that, and it's like, here's the song, and then all of a sudden the solo comes in.
Yeah.
It had that same feel. So it's like kind of like, and that was, we were really big fans of the Stooges too. And
What's wrong with that record is actually what makes it great.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
It's so
this is
funny, like
it's rock and
the
roll.
mixing.
Man.
Whoops,
It's rock and roll.
Yeah.
It's not, too overthought, overwrought.
Yeah.
Who was Speedometer Records?
Us,
That was us.
all of us.
So yeah, we wanted to, we basically decided we were just going to put out our own records, and until somebody else came along to put out our records,
Make
for
us look like we already were with somebody.
Yeah.
Then it makes people jealous. Then they want you.
So
was the
so
concept.
so a lot of it was
Make them go, hey.
I was designing all the record sleeves. Ken was doing all the legwork and the organization part of it, and we would all of us as a group would brainstorm on stuff, and that I think we did like one compilation, like an EP with some other local bands.
The Shut Up and Drive.
It's called Shut Up and
Yeah.
Drive. It's all instrumentals about cars. And we did that one, but pretty much it was just us. It was just putting out our, and we did like 4 or 5 Speedometer singles. But, by the time we got to our second single, we started getting offers in from other record labels to do singles, we did one with Screaming Apple in Germany, and we did, just other record labels. And we started getting a reputation enough that other record labels picked us up. But we continued to do Speedometer all the way to the end, pretty much.
Yep.
So anytime we'd have something, if we didn't feel like we wanted to take the time to find another record label to put it out, we just put it out ourselves. And that was when you could do that sort of thing. And it was when vinyl was cheap.
I think also too, that's the only release as far as I'm aware of where your picture is on the sleeve, it's on the cover, and all the other releases have more original artwork. And just as far as that goes, who was behind a lot of the artwork for the releases of the Hate Bombs?
That was all me.
The first one conceptually was my idea to steal the head coats.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
mean, you definitely contributed ideas.
Yeah.
Like you and I would brainstorm on
Yeah.
ideas all the time for posters and for things. But I was a graphic design major at UCF, and I always wanted to design music and stuff. So I would be doing posters for local bands. I did a bunch for Figurehead, everyone from Fugazi to Smashing Pumpkins and Green Day and all that. And then I'm like kind of at the same time, when the Hate Bombs came along, that gave me the opportunity to actually design record sleeves for bands or my own band. And I have to say that admittedly, I still kind of cringe when I see them because it's me learning how to do things and as I'm designing. So that's pretty makes me cringe, but they do have a special place in my heart.
That's okay. I sent Jeff the evolution of your evolving artwork. So at the very end of the picture that I sent him, it's got the hidden volume ones down at the bottom.
Oh, that's good.
From the festivals.
Oh, okay.
And we got
I got better.
Yeah.
It just took me like 40 years. But like, yeah, so yeah, I did all that, and that gave me an excuse to do that. And that was one of the things with the garage rock scene, you know, with Estrus and all these record labels, is that it was a very visual genre. So if you mix in comic books,
Yeah, we were lucky to have this guy. It was such a blessing to have an in-house artist. You have no idea.
We could cheaply do things.
This was before Fiverr.
One of the best in the world too. But you know, I mean, that and the fact that he knew all the printers and all the people, and then Dave and I do the legwork, running around with all the flyers at the shows,
Right, the songs. Yeah. I don't know, but it was a very visual genre. So you know, I was saying, like, you could mix in, you know, monster movies, comic books, tiki, you know, all this kind of like, you know, junk culture from the past that we were all super into, you know, manifested itself in this visual medium. So like Estrus Records record sleeves, this guy Art Chantry designed all their sleeves. He was my idol, still is.
And tell them about the book.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Okay.
But it was a friend. It was a friend of mine, you know, and the, you know, Dave Kreider is the head of the record label. Like we all have the same taste. So I think having a highly visual component to the music also dovetailed that. You know, we're talking about a mission, you know, musically, but like so visually too, because we also we all wore like matching outfits. You know, we all you know, played vintage guitars, or you know, as close to it. You know, we had punk rock stickers on our guitar. Like we were very visually attuned. Like we wanted our stage show to be, you know, with that high energy. You know, we had moves, we had chaos, we had these things, and it was like that all fed into it. But that was kind of part of the mission. It was like, yeah, let's
chaos in suits though.
Yeah, but like let's make it it's gonna look cool live.
Not shorts and high tops, backward baseball cap.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's the other thing. It's like it wasn't like two of the guys in the band were wearing suits, and then there was another guy, you know, like looked like he just got off his job at, you know, Dunkin' Donuts. Like it was literally like all of us had to look, you know, we all had to look right. And any time that someone didn't toe the line, we had to be like, all right, you don't wear that.
We had very Ramones ethic.
Yeah.
They had their rules. They showed up in airports looking like the Ramones. The whole concept was like that. It was basically like, if we're gonna do this, let's be ridiculously cartoonishly, like let's just go for it.
Well, yeah,
you know?
Like the Ramones, like we tried to make, you know, you look at a Ramones album cover, you look at the band, you hear the band, and it's like ding, ding, ding. Like there's no disconnect, and that's what
if you saw a picture of us, you would know what kind of band you were getting.
Yeah, we strove to not have a disconnect,
even though we didn't look like the Ramones. I don't want people to know that, but I'm just saying
it's
our own version of it.
Right. It's that we tried not to have a disconnect where, you know, that was always disappointing when we'd see a band and we'd be like, oh, this, you know, this person's band, oh, that guy's so cool. And then they'd get the band and it'd be like, you know, two cool people, then these two people that look like they just wandered off the street. Yeah. And then, you know, three out of the 4 songs were good, but there were like that one song where you're like, why did they do that? And then you see the artwork didn't look, and we were snobs in that respect. So
hey, look, 2 guys quit the band and they hired 2 new guys. They didn't take the suits though.
Totally. But you know,
they weren't
we were a little, I think we could be very judgmental about that. You know, it's like if you're going to be like that, you got to be like us, you know,
snarky.
Right. And then, you know, the show.
It's our last shot. We were in our 30s, man. It's our last shot to do something. So we didn't, we were thinking no prisoners.
Yeah, we were like in our mid to late 20s.
Yeah, 20s.
Yeah. So, but it was, I don't know. We also had that attitude of like we want to beat everybody else or beat everybody else up. Where we you know, we played for keeps when we played live, and I think that helped when we brought other bands in. They couldn't dial it in. Like there would be other bands that would come and they had no idea what they were in for. So we would come out, we would open. And I have to say, and this is bragging on ourselves, but I'd say there's more often than not, we blew the headliner off because we were just like,
not that way.
No, blew them off the stage. Let's say the full sentence. But because, you know, we were like, well, we'll show those guys, you know, this band comes from New York, and we're going to show these guys, like, from Orlando, whatever.
Who were some of those touring bands? I know you mentioned a couple, like Southern Culture.
Who
else were you opening up for?
Manor Asper Man,
Liar.
Winging Neckbreakers,
Yeah.
Liars, the Bomboras, and then we occasionally would play with like these rando national acts. Occasionally, oh God,
Jack Black.
what was the name of the band that we
Um,
played with in Tampa where they had the rug on the floor?
Oh, Sister Hazel.
Oh, Sister Hazel.
That was
Weird.
Club Nowhere.
Yeah, and it was like a weird. Like occasionally we would play for some weird national act, that would come through, and somebody would be like, "Oh, you guys should be good together," and so there would be those occasional shows, but we would always try to be like, well, we got to go out and blow the doors off this place, and bands knew that, and we had a reputation after a while. The bands, if you're going to play with the Hate Bombs, you just got to know they're going to try to top you, like whether we did or not. And I'd like to say we did a lot of times, but there weren't too many bands like Dave would like hang from the ceiling. Dave and I would jump. Like I think about that now, it's insane. We would jump off of like speaker stacks that would probably break every bone in my body now, and we would just be like, we're going, and we would dump in the crowd. I concussed myself at least twice. I electrocuted myself at least 3 times.
You kicked me in the tailbone really hard.
Yeah, I kicked.
Almost punched you.
You almost punched me. You did. You almost punched me. I destroyed your drum kit many times, and Ken would stand on top of his drum kit and play, and we would go into the crowd. Dave and I frequently would jump into the crowd. That was like kind of a thing. Yeah,
I think the tallest stack, we did a battle of the bands out in
Castleberry.
Weird, and then the other really tall one that we jumped off of was that big ass stack up in at Sluggos in Pensacola.
Oh yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, I don't know what we would try to top each other too. We'd be like, well, Dave's doing that, I got to do this. And I can remember doing like shows where I was like running across amplifiers and I hit an overhead and just brained myself.
Kids love it when you bleed.
Yeah.
That leads into my next question, just in terms of the injuries.
Oh,
All the years the band was active, what were some of the worst? And not just for yourselves, but was there ever any situations where somebody in the crowd got hurt pretty bad?
I can't think of anyone in the crowd.
We pretty much were
self-destructive.
Yeah.
I had one, I remember at Dante's, and we were at the end of the set, and my bass had kind of cut out, and I was like, we had this one song that we would do, and it had this like, we would do, we'd go the song, and then we kind of morph it into
No Reason to Complain.
Then we'd go into Down on the
Street by the Stooges.
Stooges, and it had this quiet part, and we'd be like, and then Ken would, hit the chorus, and we would jump out into the crowd. So I decided I had this great idea. I was going to just put my bass down, and I was going to do like the grandest stage dive you've ever seen. And so we got to that part, I put my bass down, and Ken hits the drums, and I ran full speed, and I jumped, and my head clipped the monitors. They were overhead monitors, and it hit, and it literally was like someone took a 2x4 and hit me across the. I saw stars, and I remember it just everything went black. And normally when you do something cool, even if you crash, people are like, yeah. So all I remember is I woke up, and and everyone's just like standing over the top of me, like, dude, are you okay? And like I didn't bleed or anything, but I knocked myself out for like 3 seconds, and of course the rest of the band was still playing the whole time, and all I remember is I got up, and I'm like, I had no idea where I was. I was like, well, let me just get my bass back on, and I put my bass back on and suddenly started playing, and I finished the song. And then the rest of the night people were like, dude, you probably should go to the hospital. That was the worst.
We'd be at rock royalty shows, like we'd be at the Hard Rock before they had a stage. It was in the dining room, the Hard Rock Cafe, and Dave climbed up on the monitor system, and I said, Dave, plug into Brian Setzer's guitar.
That was me.
Oh, that was you. I thought it was you.
I tried to plug.
He tried to plug into Brian Setzer's guitar that was up on the wall, because they had all these like.
I climbed up onto a speaker stack and unplugged my guitar
to the wall
to plug into Brian Setzer's
But the
guitar.
jack was bent. No wonder he gave it to him. So he couldn't get it.
I couldn't get the jack to work, so that was going to be awesome. I was going to play it.
And then we ended up on the ground, everything smashed. Dave went up on a dining room table and basically knocked everybody's drinks and everything off their table. This is a dining room. They didn't have a stage back then. So, and then Scott jumped onto my drums. All the drums were all over the place. My beer spills, and they had the plugs on the floor. So the beer's spilling into the outlet on the floor.
And wires everywhere.
And he and I are face to face, like that Chips episode where Ponch blows up the guy's lighter that's about to blow up the motorcycle, the punk rock episode.
Of
He's like, "It's all over, man. It's all over." And he goes, "It's all over."
the greatest punk rock moment on TV.
Yeah. So that was like, because we were about to get electrocuted. Right?
Yeah, we literally were like lying, like in the
Laying in
complete
this
after,
puddle of
like
beer.
feedback, all the like gear everywhere, and I'm like, oh shit, like this
Now you
this
hear,
liquid is going to go right into that electric
hears
and
this-
electrocute us.
he hears the stuff from hardcore bands all the time. We're not doing anything different. We're just doing them in suits.
So
True. Were you welcome back after that?
no,
Well, we played the regular stage, like when they
Years
built
later.
the stage later.
yeah, no,
you know.
they were not happy. They were not, but yeah, it was like a full crowd of
They were kind of like,
they loved
that was cool, but you guys are not coming back.
Yeah.
But that was cool.
it. was weird. I remember there was like all these like
We didn't
high
care.
school
We
kids
just
showed
didn't
up.
care.
All these high school kids
Yeah.
showed up and they loved it. They'd never seen anything like that in their
Our
lives.
biggest fan to this day came from that show.
Yeah, he's still
Yeah.
he's an adult.
Prom.
He's an adult now.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had a lot of destruction, a lot of, there was a period where
Brad. Hey, Brad.
every set would end up with us rolling around on the ground, feedback, amplifiers knocked over. Ken's drum set would be in 100 different pieces on the stage. And, Dave or somebody would be rolling around on the floor. And, I think constantly from like 95 to like 2000, I always had like bruises and cuts on my legs from like crashing into things. I like constantly.
Now, Dave, why don't you tell
That's because
your
I'm clumsy.
face split stories? There's two I can think of.
Oh yeah, you did split your face.
You
Yeah.
hit one on your knee and one on a cage.
Well, but I was in the Riddlers when I did the knee thing.
I watched you do the butterfly on your head on your knee. That's the butterfly stitches on your head in Tampa with the guy that
No.
the cook from North Carolina.
Okay,
Eddie.
Tampa was I tried to get the guitar up over my head.
Oh, right.
And
right,
I
right,
clipped the
right.
guitar on my, and this is a wrestler kind of move, it's like, the biggest bloody part you could get is your eyebrow. So I busted it open my eyebrow. So with my guitar, as I was trying to throw it over my head, and it just busted it open in the same place where my brother had thrown me against the refrigerator years ago when we were kids. And I had stitches from that, and it broke it in the same place. So I've got this weird, like little scar thing. My eyebrow goes like this. Anyway, did that, and blood's gushing down, and the kids were going crazy. And it's like we were laughing afterwards. It's like, kids love it when you bleed.
They do.
And I can't remember the
North
second.
Carolina. Go-Go Cage. It's on
Oh.
video. It's on video. It's on YouTube.
Oh yeah, the Go-Go Cage.
It's on
That's-
YouTube.
We were at
Sleaze Fest. Sleaze
So
Fest.
we had a festival called Sleaze Fest that was put on by Southern Culture on the Skids in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. They had
Yeah.
a metal go-go cage on stage, and we were having like the incredible show. And Dave was rocking out a little too hard.
Yeah, I was kind of like, banging around my head and stuff. And I kind of gravitate towards the Go-Go cage. And on one of the downstrokes, I hit my head on the forehead and I saw stars.
Actually,
I
got
nearly,
hit on the lip. Your
Your
lip.
lip from your mouth.
Oh,
It's on the
bleeding?
video.
We have-
yeah.
okay.
we have-
What's
there's
on video?
There's
So there
photos.
you go.
There's photos of Dave bleeding.
Anyway, I almost knocked myself out. I saw stars, but I still stayed on my feet.
Didn't you like almost brain yourself hitting your own self with your knee?
That's what I remember.
I did that in the Riddlers.
Those are the Riddlers. That was the Riddlers. So
That's
this
the
is what I
Riddlers.
loved about Dave. This is what I loved about Dave was that he just went full send all the time. And that's why I loved playing with Dave, is that he would lose his mind to the point where he didn't even know where he was. And he would just, and I mean, I did that because I was clumsy. Dave did it because he was rocking out. And so Dave would just be like, with this insane look on his face. And, he hit his head on a metal cage.
And
Which is
all
great.
of it's for not if we didn't actually play the songs. Like we still played the
Yeah, I don't
songs.
think we ever did it as like,
Maybe at
Fake.
the
Wasn't a
last
show.
2 seconds you didn't have your instrument on, but like for the most part it was like, we were with it while that was happening. So it's like I don't want people to say, well, it's all just a bunch of crap, they're running around like idiots and they can't play. No, these guys could play while hanging upside down from a metal pipe. He was in LA, he did this.
playing his guitar.
And that might be on video too,
That's
on
on
our
video.
movie.
Yeah,
We have a
that's
movie,
on
a
video,
DVD.
yeah.
So, but it was, we were like so motivated by the music and the energy that we were feeding off of each other that
Yeah.
it would inspire us to kind of lose our minds
Yeah.
while we were playing.
I mean, it was the mock show, you know, it was just like,
Yeah, mock show.
get out and you know, when I go out and see a band, I want to be entertained.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll sit home on my happy ass and listen to the record. You know, you go to the show for this visceral event. You want to be entertained, and the physicality of our show was all part of the draw of what we did. Is what's going to happen with these guys next. And you know, I didn't do anything that I didn't think I could not survive. You know, it was in some way calculated, but at the same time, it still was exciting, you know. And but like Ken said, it was controlled chaos.
Yeah.
And towards the end, it would just go off the rails. But that was the end of the show. You'd been entertained, and we're going to give you the big, you know, big extravaganza ending. You know.
When you would tour and play other parts of the country, what were some of your favorite places to make that stop and just decompress and do something other than talk about music?
That never happened.
Yeah.
No, I think, I don't know. I think we loved Athens, Georgia, Atlanta, Chapel Hill, New York. Of course, New York was always fun. LA and
Vancouver.
that was not fun. And then that was a bar fight.
Why wasn't Vancouver fun?
We did a tour with
We'll
this.
let you see the movie.
Yeah, it's actually
Was that the last days of the hate bomb?
Yeah. It's the little bit of that was captured on there. They totally missed the fight. We were not in the fight. We were part of the fight. But the San Diego, like I don't know. We had I think in cities where we liked to play, where we had friends and we liked to hang out. That was like part of it, where like we would play in Chapel Hill and then go out to, you know, what was that place? Breadman's in Chapel Hill and get breakfast, you know, then hit the road, then drive 12 hours.
Yeah.
But it was like, Cleveland was great. We had this band called the Cowslingers that were another band we played with. They were kind of a country punk band that we, you know, they were another one like the Woggles that we.
Funniest band.
So fun. And cool dudes that like, we had like certain brother bands, Woggles, Cowslingers and Bomboras were like kind of Invisible Men. We're like, we all had the same kind of attitude and sense of humor. And so we played lots of shows with them because we all got along. Bald guys up in Boston, we got along with those guys too. So it's like, you know,
Flesh Tones.
Yeah, Flesh Tones.
Our heroes, we became friends with our heroes.
Yeah,
man.
we got
not many bands can say that they opened for the Standells and the Chocolate Watch Band and the Monks.
And
I mean,
the question mark and
Mysterians.
Yeah. So you know, we like you know, I think there were times that we played shows where
head coats.
You would get, after like several days of talking about music, you'd have to be like, we got to talk about something else. At least me personally, I would just be like, if someone else comes up to me and starts talking about, you know, obscure blues influenced bands from 1964, I was just like, I don't know if I can do this for like the fourth day in a row, you know, but you kind of put up with it. But
Did you all share similar interests as far as pop culture, movie?
Everything down to that was the thing about this band, is you just say, well, I want it to be more like I got it. Don't even finish the sentence.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's like, or you're talking about a book. It's like, oh yeah, no, you know, we didn't have to Google anything. We didn't have to do it. We just knew it. We all knew this.
Yeah.
It was just simpatico.
Yeah. It was like someone could reference an obscure 60s garage band, a Hanna-Barbera cartoon from the 70s.
Mick could recite the whole Von Meter album.
Exactly. Like it was just, there were ridiculous references.
Batman episodes.
Yeah, we
Monkeys episodes.
Monkeys episodes all the time, and we would make.
By the way, we all live in this house now, so you know,
we all sleep in the same bed,
like the Monkeys.
You know, I'm glad you brought up Hanna-Barbera for a minute, because there was a lot of fictional bands too that existed, and a lot of them were garage style bands. Were you at all influenced by a lot of that as well?
Absolutely.
Love all that stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Love all that. Scooby-Doo and love it.
Anything like that was like, and also like when, faux bands that would appear on like Gilligan's Islands or the In-Laws, like the Mosquitoes or
Yeah.
the Warts, which were, the Warts were actually the
Sky Saxon and the
the
Seeds.
seeds.
Yeah.
But this is a point case. I just made a reference to a show with Kay Ballard and that was on maybe one season in the
Yeah.
60s, and both of these guys just filled in the blanks. This is the magic that is the hate bomb, is that I can bring up an obscure sitcom from the 60s that not only could they knew what I was talking about, but they could tell you what the actual band was, and maybe even what the episode was. So I think that that's proof right there.
Well, and
QED.
finishing each other's sentences. Totally. It's totally, we do that all the time. And because we are all
You're
we're
interviewing
doing- yeah.
one man.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a three-headed monster.
Three-headed
yeah,
monster.
it totally is. And that's
Forehead. Mick.
Yes,
yeah, and Mick.
And did Mick share some of the same
Oh, yeah.
excitement for some of these
Well,
things too?
not only that, but he would top it. He
Yeah,
would
yeah.
he would remember this and would be like,
He had an
"Oh, we
encyclopedic.
got to go do our homework."
He had an
Mick had-
encyclopedic memory of stuff.
Yeah,
Like
it was
he
amazing.
could bring up
Yeah.
like just the most incredible minutia, and he had an encyclopedic memory for this kind of stuff, where we'd be like, what was that? And he'd be like, ding, ding, ding. And then give you 10 more things on top of it. And then like 5 bad puns related to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can remember multiple band trips of him and I talking about obscure comic books from the early 60s for like 3 straight hours. And
And then we'd be in
hang.
town and be like, "Oh, that was
Yeah.
an 8-hour trip."
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah.
I loved to tour with
Yeah,
these
it
guys
was amazing.
because it was just so
Best time of my
because-
life. If we
Yeah.
argued about something or fought about something, it didn't matter because we had this common goal at the end of the day, and we knew we were going to get over it.
Yeah.
It was just we were just being brats because we're brothers or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it would be over. And
Same
just like-
sense of humor.
Yeah.
Same sense of humor where we just,
But if there was a disconnect somewhere in there, it wouldn't have worked.
yeah. We probably laughed. I'd probably laughed more in this band than anything.
Yeah.
It was the, like crying, laughing so hard
Yeah.
that Ken would say something in the van, and it would just be like, then you just hear Dave just start howling, and then we would all just couldn't stop laughing because and jokes that we still refer to, decades later, we're still making, someone will say something, we're like, oh my God, and then we start laughing because that was I loved like, let's pack, let's get the van and let's go. And I would love just the getting there.
Yeah.
And a lot of times getting there sucks.
Yeah.
But we had such a good time, and playing was great, and then afterwards and hanging out with these guys was
great.
Yeah.
And not only that, but back then, you didn't have like Spotify, you didn't have YouTube and all these things where you could just easily get your entertainment from. You didn't have Amazon that you could order these obscure books from. So we took that part of touring as being, and we were all nerds. We would go to the record stores. The first thing we do is, if we had time before we go to the club, hit the record store, hit the thrift store, hit the bookshop. And these weren't like, we weren't going to like Barnes and Noble or anything. We would go to like whatever the local place was. And that we would just geek out, and that was great. We loved, because it was just like this, it was the hunt of getting things back then. It wasn't necessarily whatever it was just the surprise that you found at the end of the Cracker Jack box. You would just go to the store and leaf through the record and go, holy, and find
one of our records. Oh
Yeah.
my God. Yeah.
While all this is going on, as far as the hate bombs,
Yeah.
what did your families think about the music, the touring, the shows? Were they ever in attendance, and did they ever share any opinions with you guys?
What good's that getting you?
Yeah. I think my parents were like, why are you doing this? I think they respected it, but they weren't like crazy into it. They liked all my like art and design parts, the career parts of my life. And I think the music one, I think ultimately they ended up, I think, liking it more, now, I think in retrospect, but I think just seeing as, there's a bit of a legacy that we had. So I guess, maybe that's important, but my parents were not as much into it. I think your mom was probably more into it than my parents.
This is how cool. Oh, go ahead. You do yours first.
My mom loved it.
Your mom was
great.
your mom was
She
really
loved it. She would go to some of the shows, and as a matter of fact, she's 96, and like last year she went. Whenever we did that Riddler show at the center where
the history center.
The history center.
Mm-hmm.
She showed up to that, and that was like, and she was like, she remembers everybody, and she's like, "Oh, Ken, you look so good," and stuff. And it's just amazing. And she's always been greatly supportive of anything I do, which I've been very fortunate, you know. So
My mom went to Sleaze Fest.
Oh, she did.
In
She
Chapel
did.
Hill. I'm like, welcome to Sleaze Fest, Mom. I've always wanted to say that. That's how cool she was. She used to let the Green Today and Stumble practice in the garage in Maitland, when that's where we're all from, in that area.
And I know you had mentioned that the very first release from the Hate Bombs was not at an actual studio, but I know you did record at Hitmakers with Bill Mason in Tampa. What was that experience like?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. 3 times with the Hate Bombs, with the Four Shames, and then with the Tremolords just recent, a couple months ago,
Wow.
or 4 months ago,
Basically.
just before he passed away.
Oh, he did pass away. Did not?
Yes, you didn't know that.
No, I didn't. I
I
knew
believe
he
he passed from cancer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Same exact cancer Mick had.
Really.
Wow.
But Bill beat it with radiation for what, 20 some years or something? He had it for 20 years. I mean, beat it with 20 years. I mean, Mick's, of course, took him sooner, and there you go.
Yeah, I think Bill's great because our first album was called Here Comes Trouble, and that was the reason why we had that. And we were kind of pushed into a corner, and we were dying desperate to get the record out. We recorded with this guy whose main job was recording commercials. It was just like convenience, and we did it. And I still feel like I would love to have that album re-recorded and remixed. But so we decided to make up for it, and I don't know how did we find out about, was it Paul Mutchler introduced us to Hitmaker?
Rhinell was preaching his praises,
Okay.
and was singing his praises, and so was Paul.
Okay,
So I'm not sure who first.
So we were like, this sounds like the guy. We got in there. He had a great studio. We talked about our influences, and he was able, like the previous people, previous guy that we'd done the record for, like, he had no idea what we were talking about. And we were just like, I literally almost like fought the guy because he just did not understand us. And Bill, you would mention, the MC5, or, you'd mention the early Kinks, and he knew exactly what you were talking about. So you'd be like, yeah, I want that sound. We want to get that sound that sounds like this album, that guitar sound. And he's like, hang on, and we'd be like, oh, yeah. And then he would be like, well, how about we do this? He was just a cool dude who knew how to do things. He was very, very generous with his knowledge and his time, and very patient.
Sense of humor.
Good sense of,
Great,
very funny guy.
Very fun.
And it just, it just made for a better studio, because at this point we had gotten, enough energy and enough, we hadn't been able to capture like really what we wanted on an album, and he dialed it in for us. And I think that
in
was
spades, yeah,
and
totally.
And the difference between the first album and the second was like, it's not even the same band basically. It's like that. Great songs on that first album, but second album, it was like, man, he just did.
He was a Bob Wilson Texas Playboys fan, and he had a sticker on the wall, and I said, I got something for you. So I brought him some 78s that I had, and he was just like, oh my God, thanks, man. Oh my God.
But I was,
and it's just like, I called him in between bands and sessions just to say hi. I mean, that's the kind of guy he was, and then one time I called him, and he picked up the phone, he put it back down. I called him again, he picked up the phone, put it back down. And then he texted me, he says, I can't talk. That's when I learned about it. And I said, well, are you still recording? He said, yeah, if you want to record, come on over and let's record. I go, well, how does that work? He goes, you'll see, like, don't worry about it. I got it. We work around it. And then sure enough, we went over there recently, and it was just as amazing as before. A little storyboard, like, is that good? You want more of this, whatever, so I
remember he wasn't like, when we were just like, we want this to be loud, we want this mastering to be, he was like, sure, like, he let us do our ideas and added to them. So thinking of there, I think our most successful recordings were the ones that we felt like we had some control over it, and our ones that were less successful are the ones where we had to fight with whoever we were recording with. But that wasn't a common thing. But in the studio, I think that, I think I still have a really bad taste in my mouth about the first album, but the second album, it's nothing but stars and
Yeah.
puppies and kittens. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think another thing about Bill is like I'm notorious about having red light fever. You know, it's one of those things where you get in a studio because I'm geared to be playing live.
Same.
And when I get into a studio, I'm very self-conscious, and then you've got the cans on and you hear all the imperfections, and I can't stand that. And I get nervous and I gear up. And Bill would just put you at ease and made it so you didn't have that studio feel. It was like you were playing live, and it was a very relaxed atmosphere, and that contributes to a great performance, and he was cognizant of that. So he always made it to where you didn't have to worry about anything, and he minimized that whole studio apprehension.
Yep.
And it was great. It was just such a great experience.
Appreciate you sharing that. And sad, that he had passed away, but great to relive some of those fond memories that you have. And with a lot of the music you were recording, especially with some of the albums, the 2 full lengths that had come out, did you all ever get played on local radio in Central Florida, whether it be college or even pirate or even anything that started to go even broader as far as the US and even globally?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
as early as Peckinpah Man, we got played on PRK. As a matter of fact, we all came out of a movie. We all came out of That Thing You Do.
It was a sneak preview for that.
Or no, or was it Backbeat? Because we all went to see both of them.
I think it's Backbeat.
Which one's 93?
Backbeat.
Okay, 93. Peckinpah comes out. We go see Backbeat. We get in the car. What do we have our radio station tuned to? WPRK, Winter Park. Our song comes on the radio after we just saw the Beatles, and we were like, it was That Thing You Do moment where they heard themselves on the radio and they're running around the streets,
acting like idiots.
kind of like, it was great.
We got I think we got pretty right, and we did like WPRK live.
I have a little ad that says
multiple times.
like WPRK features the underground, like bands like the Hate Bombs and blah blah blah. I'm like, we're right next to I don't know, Screaming Trees or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, it was like, why are we on this list? So I thought that was pretty.
But also Real Radio. We played They
Oh,
played
God.
us on Real Radio.
Drew Garabo.
Drew Garabo.
Oh, also, what's the guy's name?
I don't remember.
No,
Ed Till,
the other guy.
Bravo. Jim Phillips.
Jim Phillips.
Jim Phillips.
Yeah.
Um,
I can't believe I just remembered all 3 of those names.
yeah, right.
But
and we did a live thing.
Yeah.
For Drew Garabo,
Which was
Yeah.
really
So yeah, we got played on Real Radio.
yeah, we got played on I think local stations. Obviously, what's the one in Tampa, NMF? We got played on that.
Yeah.
I think we got played on a lot of nationwide, like college stations. When that was a thing, and independent stuff. WFMU in New Jersey, legendary independent station, played us a bunch.
As a matter of fact, sometimes they would send us tapes of them playing on their shows.
Yeah.
So I have like a collection of tapes. For some reason, the DJ would send us a tape, and then it would be like a few bands before us, and then us, and then it was
And then so
it's really cool
Yeah,
to do
and
that.
you would
Put all
pick-
that effort into mailing something.
Yeah, you would hear the station.
It was really cool.
Yeah,
So I've got a bunch of those laying around.
Yeah.
So
And then finally, Little Steven's Underground.
yeah,
Played.
Yeah,
I'll hunt you down a lot.
Satellite radio still to this day. We get
Yeah.
$16 a year. So the and then we did play live on WFMU for their record fair.
Oh yeah, good show.
Yeah, that was fun. And so we would do radio appearances. We would do, and then other stations would play our records. Pretty regular. Enough that.
As a matter of fact, a DJ from UCF, I forgot her name, but she went up to New York and she became a DJ up there and saw our show there.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to remember her name.
Can't remember her name.
Anyways,
Yeah.
With also the popularity rising with the garage bands, I feel like it started with like in the almost like the mid to late 90s and even went into the early 2000s. Bands like the Strokes and the Hives, and there's others, right?
Yeah,
Did
we
you-
broke up.
Did you guys ever though have any major label interest, or did you ever catch word that there were people from some of these majors that could have been at some of the shows?
I got 2 stories.
Go ahead.
RCA Records sent a letter, and it said, give us what you have, all your merchandise that you have, and we're interested in your, and it was through Abby Ginsburg and one of her friends that knew somebody at RCA or something like that. Abby Ginsburg, Paul Muchler's wife, Paul from the Bell Towers. So it said, put red stars all over a white box and send everything in the white box with red stars all over it, so we know it's the hate bombs. Even though it says the hate bombs, that's what they wanted. So they'd get it out of the pile, I guess. So I sent it, and then we got, I don't know if I even got a rejection letter. I followed up, and I didn't get, I don't know, we didn't get anything from that. So that was one. Second one was this kid came up to me, broken arm, drunk as shit, comes up to me in Atlanta. We're playing with the Woggles, and he goes, I'm starting an imprint label for Capricorn Records. Oh, right. And he goes, can I get a couple of your singles so I can go back to the guys and play it for? I go, well, they're $5 a piece. You can buy them. And he goes, you're going to make me buy them? I'm asking if I go, well, yeah, but you're just inquiring. I said, just go buy them, And so he goes, okay. He's like looking for cash. He's trying to fumble with one arm, he's kind of broken. And he's like, he goes and he buys the singles, and he's just kind of like, thanks. Okay, I'll see you later. Never heard from him again.
Yeah, I wonder why.
I talked to Manford, and I go, was that guy real? We hear that shit all the time. Hey, I'm a DJ. Can I have your single? Hey, I'm this. Can I have your record? And nobody wants to buy them. And we're like eating Cheetos in the back of the van, trying to get to the next place. So, and we're like I said, we're going full tilt with this band. This is our last chance. We're going in suits. We're going to go crazy. We're going to kill it. And so, and then Manford goes, oh man, he just signed Jucifer. Yeah, that's a legit label, man. He's like, he blew it.
But we got our $10.
We got our $10 though. We didn't lose anything.
Yeah, that's right. We made money.
When the band was getting close to wrapping things up, what are some of those other venues you remember having a chance to play in the greater Central Florida area?
Well, I remember watching one of your episodes. I think it was with Josh Dobbs with Runamucks, and he had mentioned Jeff's place, DIY Records.
Yeah,
we played there. That was a lot of fun. That was great.
There.
That was a great gig.
That's in the movie. It's fun.
It's like playing. It was like playing someone's basement.
Yeah, mom's basement. That's what it's called. The scene.
It's not in the actual movie, but it's like one of the extras.
And then Bodhisattva Social Club was a little short-lived club that was a really fun place.
Barbarella's back room on a Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was also Dante's, which later became Pulse, and we had that story
where I brained myself
where he did that. Not only that, but
the conduit.
Yeah, it was like I
tore down the conduit.
I accidentally, I was climbing on something.
I was wondering,
and I think I fell and I grabbed the closest thing I could find. It was this electrical conduit thing, and I ripped it out of the wall. Well, I saved myself, but that was worth it. And I went up to Jim Verdi because he had owned the place at that point, and I was going.
Donnie owned it, didn't he?
Who's that?
Donnie Anthony. Donnie Anthony.
Did Donnie own it? I can't remember, but anyway, I went up and I apologized profusely to Jim. He goes, "No way, man, that was rock and roll. That was great."
Yeah,
so stuff like that, But
that's the kind of support we had. We had people that wanted us to break their places. Oh, we played on top of drive-in theater.
Oh yeah.
That's on the movie. That's on YouTube.
Yeah.
Played on top of a projection booth for what was the movie? Was it
Well, there was a bunch of movies.
I was trying to
Starlight, or the Stardust, Starlight.
I was trying to think what was the film for the famous one where we're playing.
The zombie was eating the shark.
Yeah, I don't remember. It was.
And then there's
some zombie movie, and then we played on top of a parking deck downtown in like 100+ degree weather, and we're wearing the full long pants. We're not gonna punk out and wear shorts or anything. And I think Ken threw up after that show, and I think we all pretty much almost died.
Oh, we played in front of Rock and Roll Heaven. Oh, that's a big influence on us was Ray Eamon and Freddie Eamon at Rock and Roll Heaven. Very, very, very big influence.
Absolutely.
After Peaches, I was buying my records from them. You know what I mean?
And Freddie recorded some of our singles.
Yeah, and Freddie recorded 10 songs by us and turned it into a couple singles.
Yeah.
And they're still open. as far as I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we played
Saw him not too long ago.
like outdoor shows in Orlando. You know, people just don't know. Like that, I just remember that one, the two outdoor ones. The one in front of Rock and Roll Heaven was a billion degrees, and I think Mick was like hungover. You threw up after the show.
Yeah.
The parking deck one you threw up during the show, not on stage. You just like turned around and puked off the side.
Oh, and once at Johnny's Rockin' Bistro.
And John,
Very nice.
and so you know, because we were playing in like 100% humidity, 90+ degree weather, and you know, and we were jumping around and stuff like we would go all out, like, and you know, it was physically. Luckily, we were young, but it was physically punishing, I think, to do that. But,
What about a place like the House of Blues?
Yeah, we did House of Blues.
Yeah,
we did House of Blues.
House of Blues was great. Great green room.
Yeah, one of the best.
Oh my God, it was like
backstage.
Here.
Yeah, their backstage was nicer than my house.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
the only one that really came close to that was the club up in Boston or in Cambridge, up near Boston. Lily's. They had a whole basement, and the green room was amazing. Oh my God, it was just like this Playboy penthouse type of layout, and it was fantastic.
We were Jeff Conley's backup band in the Liars.
yes,
Garage
legend.
Yes.
Jeff Connolly.
Yes.
We were on two little.
How did that opportunity come about to be the
I loved it.
backing band?
Dave,
I loved it. Yeah.
Scott.
I liked the musical experience. I will say this because Jeff is not doing well these days. We did not get along personally, but being in the presence of a true music genius, it was amazing. It was amazing. Like practices with that guy.
It was like being in a band with James Brown.
Yeah. It was like every practice was a lesson in how to play garage rock, and he was a scholar, and he would explain like, do it like this because of this, listen to this part, you need to he would dissect stuff and then tell you, and you'd be like, oh my God, I've never thought of it that way before.
Yeah.
The man is a musical genius. As a person, a little difficult to be around, but we did 2 little tours with him and as his backing band, and you know, people loved it. So.
Yeah. Our good friends, the Unrequited Loves, were also his backup band, and they sent him packing. Ed couldn't handle it. Ed from Megadog, he was the drummer in the Unrequited Loves.
They didn't even play.
He couldn't handle it. And so Conley came up to me. It was in Orlando. He goes, "I'm on the plane tonight, man. They're sending me packing. Ed can't stand me, man." It's like, you know, I got along with him great. Mick got along with him like they were like twins or something. And then Dave and I, you know, we were kind of in between Scott and Mick.
I was kind of starry-eyed about the whole thing.
I was too, because we were such fans.
Yeah, still a huge fan, but it was crazy.
Like, wow.
It was crazy. And
bring up too, and I don't want to forget about this point, but after Mick had left the band too, we had Freddie Mullins. We had a series of other guitar players, you know,
Johnny Vendetta.
Johnny Vendetta.
Atlanta.
What's up?
Johnny Vendetta from Atlanta.
Yeah. And then, but we stuck with Freddie, and Freddie was an integral part of the band afterwards, and it was awesome to play with him as well. The last reunion we did, we played with Freddie.
Yeah, and he lives in LA. I hadn't seen Fred in like 20 years.
Yeah.
But Fred was
brilliant too.
Yeah, he was in a band called Le Charm Conspiracy and Fantasy. He's absolute genius. Little Sid Barrett looking kind of dude, and he kind of gave us a second life in the towards the end, because he had all these young fans. At that point we were the old fogies. We were 30. Fred was younger than us, and then he came along and brought his fans, and that kind of gave us a kick in the ass. And he was a great guitar player, super nice dude, really cool. He had the look, he was just a good looking dude, and super nice. And so it was really cool. We, to get, since obviously Mick couldn't play the 30th anniversary show in 2023, so we got Freddie out, and he filled in, and he was great. We were just all happy to be together again. It's nice.
How did that change, if it did, just the whole idea of the band? Because you bring in other people, different ideas, different perspectives, all of that. So did it change anything, or did things remain mostly the same?
I think it was mostly the same. Fred also could bring the heat. Fred more often than not would be upside down on, he was
falling off stuff left and right. He had the total concept of what we're doing.
But then he also brought that the Fred's the only time we would play where he like would be like making out with girls from the stage, like girls like this happened, right? Where we, you know, I think it was our last show, our farewell show at the Go Lounge, or at well, it's not Go Lounge, whatever it was called. And I can remember, you know, at some point during the set, this girl, this like real cute girl, just like grabs him and they just start making out from the stage. That was Fred. That's what Fred brought to the band.
Rock and roll legitimacy.
The rock and roll legitimacy. We were just like,
He's like, he joins, he goes, what's this nerd shit? He's like, nah, man, nah, we're going Bill Wyman.
I mean, for chicks and kicks. Yeah.
Bill Wyman coming on tour, guys.
Yeah, nah, it was great, but it, you know, I don't think it really, because we had such a big stock of songs. We definitely wrote a lot of stuff that never really got fully recorded, but like, you know, we kind of already had several years of the Hate Bombs, so it was kind of easy to ease him into the
And he brought his own thing too.
Absolutely,
You know,
absolutely.
totally. I mean, you know,
he's such a yeah, because we wrote a bunch of because that's when I started writing.
well, yeah, you became like, we had that wave of like, you know, I kind of died off after a while because I just
He was the hit man. You were
couldn't come up with anything.
hit after
Mick
hit.
had a bunch of great songs, and then all of a sudden, like at the end, you know, and Ken had some great songs, and
And then
Scott,
I was kind of towards
it
the
was like the dark horse, and then all of a sudden, like at the end, I guess it was just the fact that you felt relieved that you're going to be out of the band, so you just had this like,
that was like
"Pressure's off, I'm going to come out," and then he was
pressure's off, I'll
getting
just-
great songs. It was amazing.
So-
I mean, Scott had you had like 6 or 8 songs towards the end that were just like,
yeah, and but
where were these before? They were amazing.
So it took me that long to figure out how to play, and then
we recorded with Bill Mason with those 6 songs, but then it never saw the light of day. So
they're out there somewhere.
I want to do like a redo of Hunt You Down, and I want to include those songs. Maybe we can go in and include some stuff on Pro Tools and finish them up.
And because the band's discography dates back to the very early 90s, so there's been a lot of time for people to later discover the Hate Bombs, or even later on rediscover certain parts of the band's discography that maybe they may have missed during its initial run. Do you feel that the band has even garnered more popularity over the last 20, 30 years?
It's the Hunt You Down album has legs. We have a 1 million selling single on Spotify, 1 million selling hits on Spotify, streaming,
Don't use
whatever.
the word selling, because I think we
Yeah.
made like a nickel.
No,
we didn't make any money. Long story.
Yeah. So anyway, that's why is that happening? And then also the fact that we get royalties from satellite radio from Little Steven, stuff like that.
Okay, so I have this is the story about the legs of the Hate Bombs, because this is a recent thing that happened to me. So last year, my family and me and my wife and my 2 daughters, who were like in their 20s, we went to Japan. And so while we were there for a couple of weeks, and over in I had this record label that I did after I left Orlando called Hidden Volume, and one of the bands that I put out was a band called the Fadeaways, and they're like a 3-piece garage, awesome, amazing live garage rock band from Tokyo. And so their main guy, his name's Jozo, he's like, why don't we meet up, you know, and we'll go to this bar that's owned by these guys, Fink and Fifi, who are in legendary Japanese punk band Teen Generate, and they have this bar. And so he tells everyone at the bar, "Oh, this is Scott from the Hate Bombs," and everyone was like, "Oh," and like people were like coming up and they were like shaking my hand, and they're like, and so people were like, "Oh, you were in the Hate Bombs." So then he pulls out both of our albums on vinyl. This guy from Japan, and he had both the albums, and he's like, "Hey, can you sign these for me?" And my kids had never really, you know, they're obviously born after that. They were like, "What is happening?" And so people were coming up and they were like getting pictures with me and then the cover of the second album, the model for the painting on the second cover was my wife, Diana. And so I told Jozo, I was like, "Well, that's Diana on the cover." And he's like, "Well, she's got to sign it." So people were coming up to her, and we were getting pictures with Fink from Teen Generate. My kids were like, they couldn't stop laughing. They were like famous in Japan. Like we were there for like 2 hours and just, you know, talking to people. They, you know, we wrote down, they had us write down like what our favorite albums were that goes, you know, for the rock stars. I get asked this, and then they put it behind the bar. So Diana and I both did our lists, and we were signing autographs, and it was it was like these records came out like 25 years, 30 years ago, and some young guy in Japan had them, and everyone at the bar knew the Hate Bombs. And weirdly enough, too, I think I told you that where they asked Diana, my wife, if she'd been in a band, and she was in a band called the Super Vixens from Athens, Georgia, which is another how we met through the Hate Bombs. And he's like, I have your single. So he like brings up the single on the phone. He's like, is this you? And she's like, oh my God, like nobody has the single. And so he tells that. And all these people at this bar were like music nerds. They all knew her band. And so the kids, again, my kids were just, we ended up leaving the club later on, and they just, the whole, train ride back, they were like, I can't believe this just happened. And so I feel like, yeah, what's the legacy of the Hate Bombs? It's not, we're not like a household name, but the fact that I could go to Japan decades later and encounter a room full of people that have heard of my band, they had the records. It just is like, you can't ask for anything better than that. To me, that was pretty much like, that kind of says, okay, I think we did all right. So I think that's probably one of the, if you could say, oh, the hallmark of the band, just somebody that's not related to me enjoyed this record.
We couldn't have done it without Dave Mitchell, Dan Carr, and Sandra Carr too. They're big supporters.
Huge fans.
And Dave did some artwork for us. I wanted to do a little shout out there, and they support us the whole time.
Still
to this day.
And so if
every single show.
I did a poster for a festival in Spain a few years ago, and one of the guys that was helping out with it, we were emailing back and forth, and I've never met this guy in my life, and we were talking about shows, and he's like, you were in the Hate Bombs? He goes, I saw you in New York when you opened for the Monks. This is one of the Fantastic Dracula guys. And he's like, you were one of my favorite bands. Like, my girlfriend and I talked about you guys for days. And
It's a rumor says it was his best bet.
but you're like, again, like meeting people, or in this day where we can communicate with people like decades later, and there's people that were there, or people that, and they were like, I was there, I've seen your band, I loved your band. And that's like, you can't ask for more than that.
That's why we did the concentration trips. We did the festivals as much as possible, because we knew everybody from around the world would see it, and that's the only way we could build.
I was definitely texting these guys, from Japan. I was like, dude, you're not going to believe this shit. And
you sent me pictures.
I was sending pictures, like, check it out. There's like, they're holding up the record.
That's really cool just to hear that story, Scott, and just taking us through what that experience was like. Because I imagine in so many respects it was quite surreal to be all the way across the globe, and again, maybe not a household name, but those that know. And it's just great to be able to have that moment. And as far as Dave and Ken, your thoughts on the legacy?
It was a great part of my life. I loved it. And, like Scott says, if a couple people that matter, know us, then that's awesome. It's kind of like that. It gives you a little immortality in that respect. It's going to last longer than I'm going to be around. So that's legacy. I mean, yeah, we're not a household name, but we'll just be remembered a little bit more than not, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, and also too, legacy, I mean, it just goes in, it's just who I am. I mean, we play music. We're musicians. We've done this for all our lives, and we're continuing to play. Ken and I are in a band now. Scott was playing up until recently, and I probably will get back into it at some time or another. It's too much work.
But that means I have to leave the house.
That's legacy. I mean, to me, it's just like it's a part of your life. It's who you are. It's your identity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if there's people that enjoyed it or remember it, that's great. That's icing on the cake. But for me, it's the love of doing it, and
Yeah, the first thing I want to do is make music. That's the main thing I want to do. Because when I figured out a song, the first best song I ever wrote, I was like, I couldn't believe it. Felt like electricity was going through my body. So that was the first thing. But then the second thing, if anybody ever asked me, why did you do it, or why do you want to do it? And everybody has different reasons, but mine is to make memories. So we created these incredible memories. I can go and die and sit there on my deathbed, lay there on my deathbed and go, ha, yeah, It's exactly what I wanted to do. And I didn't think I could do it. And we did it. That's what I love about it. That's what I want to take away from it, is the fact that, it didn't go as far as we wanted, but it went further than I expected.
There you go.
Thank you, Ken, Dave, and Scott for sharing that. And I know you just alluded to, which if you're checking out this episode and you're familiar with these three guys, you already likely know they did other things post the hate bombs. So what else came after that? If you can just quickly share just some of that with us in terms of what happened post hate bombs and how do you stay connected to music these days?
Well, you know what came after Hunt You Down was Vindi Vidi Vicious, and we were first. The Hives sound like the hate bombs. I don't know what the alternate universe, I don't know what the heck happened there, but if we would have survived one more year, it'd be a whole different story.
Yeah, little Steven said we played up in New York at this cave, one of the most junior cave stomp or whatever. And little Steven, that's the first time he had seen us. He says, well, came up to me and he goes, that was amazing. What do I have to do? I heard you guys were breaking up. What do I have to do to make you guys stay together? And I said, give me $1 million right now. And he like went, and then walked off.
Yeah.
So yeah. Obviously, he didn't want it that bad.
We stayed friends though,
I know,
and he still
yeah,
off the deal after that.
Absolutely, totally.
So, what was the question again?
So here I can answer my part.
Good.
So after it was 2001, and I moved from Orlando to Baltimore, and so that was kind of an end of the official end of the hate bombs. So we clearly have played multiple shows after that, and they played shows with a different bass player for a little bit after that. But I moved to Baltimore, didn't really do music for a while, and then I was in a band called The Stents. Then I started this record label called Hidden Volume Records, which I put out probably about 50 or so releases, like garage, punk, pop type stuff, and did a festival called Field Trip South here in Orlando in 2017, 2018. I played in some DC, Baltimore bands after that. And then the pandemic hit. And then at that point I was like, I'm kind of done with this. So during the pandemic, we moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico. So I haven't really done any music then other than getting up and, whenever I come to Orlando, if these guys happen to be playing, I'll pop up on stage and do something with them, play a couple of songs, which is always great, and then we've done, we've done a few. We did 2013, we did a 20th anniversary reunion show. Then we did a 30th in 2023. So I assume we'll be doing a 40th in 2033 if we're all still here. But yeah, that's kind of what I did for that. So, but that's kind of how I've stayed in music. Again, that's how I put out probably 5 different bands from Japan, bands from Europe, bands from all over the US, and so I was able to kind of. Yeah, I still do that, and to this day, I'm a designer, graphic designer. So I've designed music stuff. I did Green Day's North American tour a couple of years ago. I did their tour promo. I've done tons of music packaging for bands and things like that. So I'm constantly still fully immersed in music.
Sort of like Jim Leatherman in that way, that he loves taking pictures of bands. So he mixes the two things he loves the most, photography with the bands, and he took a ton of our pictures, and I want to thank him for that. Still to this day, great friends
And honorary member.
Yeah, he wasn't the hate.
He replaced Scott for a couple.
He was on one tour.
He was on the Southern Culture on the Skid tour.
The one where he played in Miami.
Post me.
And at Churchill's. And Chuck Zayas from Rocket 88 was on one tour with us while Scott was having a baby.
Well, my wife had the baby.
Well, you look marvelous for having a baby.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I keep in shape. But yeah. So
Scott was off having babies. Yeah.
Being a dad.
Being a dad.
Yeah. And then you guys were.
Oh yeah. So yeah. After the hate bombs, I was in the Four Shames with Dave.
Simultaneously with Mick.
Splintered and my duties into the Evidence with Mick. So
his post hate bombs.
Yep, post hate bombs. And then after that, Charlotte's. Well, the Stents. I moved to Baltimore
For a year.
for a stint in the Senate.
That he was like,
So for 2015, Scott brought me up there, and I was like production coordinator for a company that he worked for, and I was like,
we wrote some great songs together.
and wrote some songs, and I played drums in the band, and so the stints were, that was hot. That was a cool year. Got to open for Paul Collins, Eddie Munoz, and what was that band? Eddie Munoz band.
The Split Squad.
Split Squad.
Clem Burke.
Clem Burke, from Blondie, so we got to play those kind of shows. Keith Strain from the Flesh Tones is in that band too. So that was fun, good times, met a lot of cool people up there. Came back, and Dave and I hit the ground running, did the Hate Bombs kind of for a year because we didn't have any songs in this new band we wanted to be in. So like we used all the Hate Bomb songs as kind of like covers of our, that kind of thing, like just to get our sea legs back, and then changed it to the Tremolords. So that's where Dave and I are now.
Yeah. So my experience after that was, of course, in the Four Shames with Ken and Shadow Pearson and Jim Leatherman again on bass. When Ken went off to do the stint with the Stents, I formed a band with Aaron Zapton, and great guy, and him and Jeff Orlando, we played for a couple of years, and then that fizzled out. Then I didn't do anything for a while. I DJ'd for a little bit, and then I got with Mick, and he wanted to do an instrumental band. And I said, that'd be great. So we practiced a lot and stuff. And then we just so happened, Ken comes back into town. And that's when we kind of did the reformation of the Hate Bombs. Aaron Zacton had just moved back into town from Colorado. And he is by first trade is a drummer, but then he started collecting guitars and basses while he was out in Colorado and started playing. And so I said, hey, would you like to join? And then he said, yeah. So we got together and did that, and became the Hay Bombs, come the Tremolords. And that's it.
Yeah. Aaron Zacton, Terry Mooney, Dave Ewing, and me.
Or the current lineup, yeah.
Current lineup, Tremolords. Yeah.
Terry Mooney,
was a Rocket
amazing
88
player, played with Rocket 88. He's played in a bunch of other bands as well. So fantastic.
Full circle.
Yep. There we are. And here we are.
Appreciate that full circle getting us to where things are as far as the present day. And I just want to take a moment to really thank you to all three of you for being wonderful guests on the podcast, taking the time to really time travel back through the journey of the Hate Bombs, and it's just been a real honor getting a chance to have you on today. So thank you again for being such great guests, and we are going to get ready to close things out. So I would love to give each of you the last word. Any final thoughts that you would like to share to the folks out there, both checking this episode out on YouTube, but also listening to it? The floor is yours to take us home. Whoever would like to start us off first.
Let your past lead your future. We listened to the We the People. We covered their songs. A couple of guys are gone now, and we had a chance to see them live, and people should kind of take that into consideration when they're moving forward and doing their things. Oh, and bands, keep the money in one till. Do not split your money amongst each other, because you'll be glad when you go into a recording studio that you have that money. That's my words of wisdom to everybody.
Those are good ones. Ken was very good with money. I think
we kept it in a Future Shock book, hollowed out.
I don't know.
Brian McGuire.
Have any words of wisdom like that, but I think, generally speaking, like, again, like I'm really proud of what we did with the Hate Bombs, and I couldn't have thought of better people to do it with, Dave, Ken, Mick, Freddie, I think, if we were going to have, if you're going to be in a band, the fact that decades later that we all still get along and we still laugh and we still have a great time, from one of the best times of my life. So I think that, I think that's just been, that's, if I can take away anything from that, that's probably the thing that I enjoyed the most.
And taking a line from my favorite movie, Spinal Tap, have a good time all of the time. But seriously, I mean, it's also just like be with people you really love and create, enjoy life. It's too short.